Alright guys, welcome to the Fight Night Imavov versus Borralho full card breakdown. We'll do the normal start, like 10-15 minutes of questions, then get into things. Hey Bob Builder. Whoever can hear me also confirm the audio is working because I always doubt that with my setup. Thoughts on the Raja situation? I mean, I feel like everything that can be said has already been said. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a terrible situation. I have no idea what Rampage is doing in every single interview, because he's genuinely just making things worse for himself at this point. If he had just shut up and, like, stepped away, he probably could have gotten away with, like, okay, it was just my son did something chaotic and I had nothing to do with it. But now that he's, like, continuously coping about it in the weirdest ways, now everyone's going to revisit, like, his history with criminal activities, let's say, and it's definitely not going to go well for him in terms of, like, any brand deals or sponsorships he had, in my opinion. I think a lot of influencers, let's say, whether they're fighters or something else, just don't know when to shut up in general. It's a weird thing where they just keep talking and continuously make themselves look worse instead of just taking, like, a month away and then things would blow over. Rampage shouldn't even be streaming right now. He's streaming right now? Like, that's crazy. Like, he should, in my opinion, just disappear for a month. And if he disappeared for a month, people would completely forget about his involvement. I do think, though, that people are overblowing the likely punishment that Raja will get. Not saying I agree with it or anything, but because this is in California, and they have a very high tolerance, let's say, all likelihood is he probably gets, like, 2 years of prison time, maybe, and then probably gets let out on good behavior in a year. I would say the absolute max he's going to get is probably, like, 5 years. Suffering from cloud poisoning? Yeah, I guess. Cloud does weird things to people. What are your initial thoughts on Van versus Pantoja? So, it's a very strange fight, in that if we look at it on paper, in terms of skill for skill, accolades, and so on, Pantoja should take it. But there's also the reality that Pantoja's getting up there in age. At a certain point, there is going to be a fight where it's just like, oh, he's done. And while I don't think his abilities are going to drop off significantly leading up to this fight, it is a strange matchup, because Van is someone who in the past has focused heavily on body shots, which could be a weakness for Pantoja, given that absorbing damage on his chin has always been a strength for him. So if Van were to double down on a game plan involving just blasting the body repetitively, there is definitely a path to victory for him. Granted, he obviously has to be able to defend the takedowns, or none of this even matters. But, like, there is definitely a world in which Van causes an upset here. So I think this is another one of those fights where Pantoja is probably going to be like minus 180 in terms of betting odds, and I really don't know who to pick. DJ versus Hamzat, who do you got? I would have to go Hamzat there. I don't think DJ has the style to fight someone much heavier than him. Who do you think beats JDM? Right now, that's a tough call. I don't know if any current welterweight is really a good matchup against JDM, and I don't think I would pick any of them over 50% of the time. I'm very excited for the Kada debut. I think he's going to catch an older Pitbull. Very possible. We'll definitely get to that fight. Rampage lost my respect after the Helwani interview. Yeah, very fair. I don't know what he was doing. Van isn't big enough or strong enough for Pantoja. Yeah, I mean, if he gets out-muscled to the ground and gets subbed, well, that's what that is. It really depends on how he deals with the first few takedowns, in my opinion. Ben's going to break down Pantoja's cardio trust. It's possible. Alessandre will school Bexot. I knew about this fight 2 months ago. Yeah, I think there was a rumor for a while. It's a strange fight. I don't know why they're doing that fight. Because they're both exciting prospects, and, like, we still have, like, Rob Font in the rankings. Like, why do we have these, like, fighters who are getting over the age of 35 still in the rankings, and we're making, like, Alessandre and Bexot, fight each other, when they could theoretically both go into the rankings? Topuria brother or Allmaker? Definitely Topuria brother in that case. Alessandro would beat him. Who do you think beats Hamzat? He seems like he improved his cardio a lot. I actually don't think he necessarily improved his cardio. I think he just improved his cardio expenditure. So he didn't really chase a finish at all in the fight with DDP, which is definitely smarter if he's not going to be able to get a finish, because had he chased it, he probably would have gotten finish in later rounds. That being said, I don't think that anyone now beats him. At least I wouldn't predict it. Because if we look at each of the possible matchups, like okay, on paper, Fluffy should be his worst matchup. But then when you look at, like, the actual situation with the positions Fluffy gets into, like, he gets into bad situations pretty much every fight, like, with the exception of Delija, but Delija is so slow that is what it is. So I don't really think anyone's a great matchup for Chimaev right now. Maybe Imavov could catch him. That is a possibility. We'll see how Imavov looks this weekend if he wins. But yeah, I'm not picking anyone against him right now. Do you see JDM KOing Islam? Right now, I'm mildly leaning towards it, but I'm not confident either way. It's a very close matchup, in my opinion. There's ways for both fighters to win. Costa versus Shara, I think Polo runs through him. Yeah, that should not be a competitive fight. That should be a Costa knockout. I don't know why they're pushing Shara still. He's not that level. I don't see how Benoit wins. We'll get to that. What do you think of Michael Morales? I think he's good. I think he also has a lot of time to develop. So when we're talking about Michael Morales as he is right now, it's not the way we'll be talking about him in 3 years, probably. As he is now, I don't think he has a chance against JDM. In 3 years, given a lot of developments, that definitely may change. I don't trust Fluffy on bottom against Hamzat. Yeah, me neither. Like, when you look at how close to being subbed Fluffy was against Rodolfo Vieira, even though Rodolfo, of course, has, like, more Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu credentials than Chimaev, I do think Chimaev is definitely more suffocating on top. I don't see Makhachev taking the shots Bilal did. Yeah, if he gets hit the same way, he's definitely going out. Ilya or Khabib? It's a weird question, because we haven't seen Ilya fight chain wrestling before, really. Like, if I really, really had to predict, I'm going to say Ilya, because Khabib does get hit. And I don't think you can afford to get hit by Ilya. And I think that Ilya's footwork was probably on the level of, say, McGregor, who Khabib struggled with more than people seem to remember. And of course, Ilya has much better, like, fundamental takedown defense, and Ilya has more cardio and the ability to deal damage later into the fight. So I would very, very mildly lean Ilya, but it's kind of impossible to predict on, really. Shavkat versus Islam, who would you pick? I keep flip-flopping with that one. I think I would pick Islam right now because his fundamental defense is just better everywhere. But it's one of those fights where it's like, yeah, I mean, Shavkat does have knockout power. I do think Islam can be chinned. If Islam can't get a takedown or just isn't having, like, the most success early, it could be a problem for him. How do you feel about my boy Leon being given Prates? I think the UFC is just done with Leon, and they're like, okay, we're just going to use him to build other people now. So, any Leon fight, he has the potential to win, 100%. I'm never going to say, like, Leon has no chance of winning this fight. But, yeah, I mean, if he backs up against Prates and gives Prates the exact range he wants, it's not going to go well for him. The only guy that Khabib could have fought that could have beaten him is GSP, in my opinion. GSP definitely would have beaten him if they fought at 170. That fight would not have even been mildly competitive, in my opinion. But there are definitely other people who are bad matchups for Khabib in general. Possibilities like Tony and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I think Tony was a very bad matchup for Khabib just because of the cardio aspect. People underrate attributes a lot in MMA, especially in the heavier weight classes. Yeah, I mean, especially in the heavier weight classes where there's a lower skill level, let's say, attributes will get you pretty far. Ilya or JDM. So this is going to be an unpopular take, but I think I would pick Ilya against JDM. Because I think that Ilya's footwork is just so ridiculously good, and he would have the speed advantage against JDM, where JDM is usually used to having a speed advantage. You take those two together, combined with the fact that Ilya probably does have more power than JDM as well. And I do think the matchup does skew Ilya, even though JDM wouldn't be, like, I wouldn't count him out by any means, but I would skew at Ilya. Ankalaev versus Aspinall, who are you leaning towards? I think I would lean Aspinall just because Ankalaev doesn't really have the one-shot knockout power you would want against Aspinall. So if Ankalaev was like putting people out in one punch, I know he's done it a few times, but not against higher level comp for the most part. So if he was able to do that, I would pick Ankalaev. But the fact that he's going to probably need to land like multiple combinations to hurt Aspinall, or really just pressure for 25 minutes, yeah, I think Aspinall would probably catch him and put him out at some point. Pound for pound, Merab or Hamzat, who wins? Pound for pound, definitely Merab. So you say Leon always has a chance to win. What should he do differently, or just do in general? He needs to pressure a lot more. He needs to be comfortable just moving forwards and actually using his full skill set. Because always forcing himself to stay on the back foot is dramatically limiting what he can do. Because Ankalaev said 2 more fights and he goes up. I don't know if Ankalaev will win 2 more fights. I could definitely see him beating Alex again because it just seems like Alex isn't fully invested in MMA right now. But if he's going to fight like a Yuri or an Olberg or something along those lines, even if he were to fight a Reyes, I would probably pick all of them against Ankalaev. Light heavyweight to heavyweight is a huge jump, to be honest, and it's not something you can do quick. I mean, the nice thing about light heavyweights going up is heavyweights just suck. So, generally speaking, you can make the jump a lot more easily because even if you're at a weight disadvantage, you'll probably be fine. But, yeah, if you want to do it properly and, like, actually put on muscle mass and be, like, a lean 235, 240 pounder, then, yeah, it'll take time. Does Craig survive Modestus? We'll get to that. It's a weird fight, but we'll get to it. What's good, Oracle? Hey, El Tapo. Who beats Ilya right now? The only person who I think is gonna is 50-50 with Ilya is John Silva, and I just don't think the fight's ever gonna happen. Leon overthinks everything where it hurts his skill. I think you mean everything to the point where it hurts his skill set. Yeah, I agree with that. Confidence in John Silva next weekend, like 95%. He should walk through Lopez. I don't think it'll be mildly competitive. Most likely Islam has a pretty good chance, and Arman has a kind of low chance, but better than the others. Yeah, I mean, Islam has a better chance than Arman, because Arman's defense on the feet is just abysmal. Islam's is at least better, but I still think he would get caught. Alright, we'll do 2 more minutes of questions, and we'll get into the breakdown. Do you rate Ikram Leskarov as a prospect? He's pretty good. The thing is that he's pretty chinny, but if you watch his Hamzat fight, Hamzat wasn't able to take him down. No, I don't rate Ikram. And the reason why, and he's actually a very likable guy, so I do kind of wish he was better. But the biggest problem with Ikram is that it's not just that he's chinny, is that he has 0 fundamental striking defense, and he's chinny on top of that. So you take those two together, and any decent fighter is going to knock him out. His takedown defense, on the other hand, spectacular. Like, in a weird way, he could be a very bad matchup for Chimaev if they were to fight again. But any fighter who has hands at all and isn't getting taken down instantly just chins him. Prime GSP or Ilya? Right now, I'd still probably lean Prime GSP. Why do people not talk about how bad Islam's footwork is? Because people don't like to criticize him for some reason. I don't know why. Makhachev has a lot of fundamental issues that make me think he's probably going to lose his next few. If the UFC gave Ruffy a big jump up after his BSD win, like a Gaethje or a Hooker, do you think he wins? I'll talk about that when we talk about the BSD fight, but I'll get to it, don't worry. What do you think about the McMillan performance? He's the Sean O'Malley's teammate, right? I was not a fan of that. A lot of people were hyping it up because it was a brawl, but if we look at it skill for skill, it was very low level. I am a fan of the John Paul guy, though. I'm blanking on his last name. I think he's going to be a legitimate prospect. I do actually very much rate his chances of going far. Also, Mikhail's brother, Cesare, right? He also has a good chance as well. Very accurate, very conservative with his cardio, but it just means that he uses his power when it makes sense. So those two, I actually give both of them a chance to be ranked at some point. Ikram Liskarov should grapple more. Yeah, he should. The problem is, I don't know if his grappling is dominant enough to just continuously grapple, while on the feet, he's always prone to getting chinned. So, I mean, he has, like, I guess 2 more years to kind of try to improve. I wish him the best. He's one of the more, just generally broad appeal, likable, like, Dagestanis, but we'll see how it goes. Or is he a Dagestani? I forget, but that region, you know what I mean. Best fighter on this season of Contender Series so far? I think it's Jean Paul. Do you think Fiziev wins against Charles? It's hard to say, especially with Charles getting knocked out so recently, but I am going to lean Charles a later sub. Islam is kind of overrated in my opinion. I do agree. Do you rate Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes? I rate Paul Hughes' potential a lot more. I think that Paul Hughes' first actual, like, fight, like, I know that he's fought, like, technically decent UFC guys before, but, like, his first high-level fight was Usman, and he did well. It should have been scored probably a draw. There's also an argument for a Hughes win, but whatever. So I think that Hughes has potential. I don't think Usman has potential. Because he's just, like, always does enough to win. And it just does not look like it's going to be good against a higher level competition. I was thinking the same about McMillan. I was surprised he got a contract that looks so sloppy. Yeah. They gave him a contract. He's going to get flatlined in his first fight. Like, it's just whatever. I mean, bet against him, free money. I guess we take that. Yeah, the Jean Paul KO was crazy. Yeah, it was amazing. And the funny thing with Jean Paul is that he's a grappling specialist. But for a grappling specialist, besides maybe Oliveira, I don't think I've ever seen a grappling specialist with as much natural power as Jean Paul. And his striking fundamentals aren't quite there yet, but they're getting very close to the point he's able to produce those knockouts, and he might even be able to do it in the UFC. So I think that if he's able to tune in his striking a little bit more, and he has time, he's pretty young, he's going to be a menace in that division. Do you see Corey getting a sub against Merab? It's always possible, but I wouldn't predict it. I really like Manuel Souza. He needs to stop pulling Kimura, though. I don't have a high opinion of Souza, but like maybe he'll do okay. I think he's way too reliant on slinging hooks. He always like projects exactly what he's going to throw. It's not something that works well once you get into UFC comp. It looks good on the regional scene because you can get some highlights, but I don't think he's going to get a win in the UFC, honestly. Have we seen John Silva's chin? I feel like Diego's the hardest hitter he will fight. We have seen him hit clean a few times, but we haven't seen like someone with the power of Diego hitting him, I guess. So I would say, yeah, no, Silva's chin is still a bit of a question. Do you see Merab finishing Corey? No, it's probably a decision. It's always possible, but it's probably a decision. And Diego's definitely not cooked. I'm coping, fair enough. Or do you think the Dagestanis won't be as dominant in the UFC in the next few years as before? Yeah, so I think that as people are figuring out the Dagestani style, and they're figuring out their ways of dealing with it, some are going the whole Craig Jones direction, others like Ilya have their own direction, and so on. The Dagestani style is going to stop working. Because the problem is, a lot of it is based on people not understanding how it works. Once you understand their like transition-heavy grappling style, where it's like, okay, they're just going to do slow transitions every time you give them something to work with. Okay, well then you give yourself opportunities to escape every time they do transition. where you understand exactly what those transitions will be, it gets very easy to spot them and like preemptively get out of it. What do you think about Jose Delano? I wasn't as impressed as everyone else, it seemed, or maybe I'm blind. The problem with that week is that everyone was just so low level that the favorites were fighting that it was like, okay, I can't take anything away from this because, yeah, you looked good beating up a can. What else can I say? So, like, I'm not going to say Delano does not have potential. I just don't think that that fight proved anything. But we're at the 20-minute mark, actually, so we'll get into the analysis, then we'll go back to some random questions at the end. So I do like talking about this stuff. All right. Okay, so starting off with Sam Hughes versus Shauna Bannon. Sam Hughes is good at nothing, but bad at nothing either. She's good enough at everything that basically if her opponent has a weakness, she will exploit it. If they have bad enough cardio, okay, so she'll just keep a high enough pace. If they don't have the best striking, okay, then she'll strike. If they don't have great grappling, then she'll grapple. So basically just do whatever her opponents aren't good at, which works, to be fair, at this level. So overall, well-rounded. Not going to go too far in the division, most likely, but a solid fighter for women's strawweight. Shauna Bannon, I have no clue what she's doing 80% of the time. She's just like keeping her lead leg up and just jumping in, and it's like a modified karate style, except with the good parts of it removed because she doesn't have dynamic footwork. She just keeps her lead leg up. She's kind of, I think, trying to abuse like length. I mean, maybe her legs are just super long, so she thinks she can keep people at distance doing that. I guess it kind of works sometimes. Her wins have all been not all controversial, but just not good. I think one split decision against Ardalian, and then she basically got knocked out by Puja Tamar and then got like revived and then got handed an armbar. You guys remember that very weird sequence? I am going to go with Sam Hughes, and I think that Sam Hughes actually might get a finish here. I think that everyone's going to be like, oh, just immediately play go the distance here. There's such a skill discrepancy that I could see Sam Hughes getting a takedown and just beating up Bannon to the point that Sam Hughes gets like a TKO or just a rear naked choke. Because I rate, what's her name? Sam Hughes' last opponent. Yeah, Luciano. I rate Luciano's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a lot higher than Bannon's, and Sam Hughes did have a very close rear naked choke in round 2. So I could see Sam Hughes getting a finish here. So the most likely outcome, of course, is Hughes' decision, and that will be my pick, but don't be shocked if Hughes gets a finish. Bannon literally went out cold in her last fight and then fluked an armbar. Yeah, exactly, it was wild. What genre of fighter do you think will be the next thing? Lots of Brazilian strikers on Dana White's Contender Series. I don't think it's going to be a genre of fighter in that sense. I think it's going to be how reliant you are on data. So I think that with Topuria and the Fighting Nerds, we're both seeing them really optimize their training. And I think the next generation of fighters that are going to succeed are going to be doing that. Okay, so everyone's going to jump to a conclusion about this fight, and I think it's a little bit flawed, but we'll get to that. So Andreas Gustafsson, as we saw in his last fight, will basically just sprint forwards and throw stuff, then try to get you against the fence, constantly strike in the clinch, try to drag you down, and he's just basically 24/7 pace. He's not very technical with anything. His wrestling is pretty solid, to be fair, but it's not like fundamental great shots. It's more like, oh, he's getting into the clinch and then trying to tear you to the ground. So he's just trying to break his opponent straight up. It is kind of entertaining. I don't think it's the highest level because he does get hit a lot. His striking defense is well below 50%. So whenever he fights an opponent that's just going to throw something up the middle, he's going to get cracked and probably slept. But up until he hits the point where someone can stay calm where someone is charging at him, he does definitely have a shot of breaking a lot of people. The Chaos Williams fight was crazy because on paper, Chaos Williams should have slept him, but he just did not know how to deal with the pressure. On the other side, Renat, of course, arguably lost his last 3 fights. I mean, I guess he didn't really lose 3 ago. That was the draw to Zaleski, I think. But has not had a good last 3 showings, let's say. He's going to focus a lot on the wrestling. He's not very fast in how he shoots, but he's one of those slow twitch guys where, like, okay, if he gets to position, he can kind of just grind you down and keep you there. He also has relatively solid cardio for someone who has, like, his type of build and style, where he can kind of do what he does for 15 minutes straight. He did slow down a little bit against Zaleski, but I think it was mainly the liver kick that kind of shut him down there. He is very slow in how he strikes. He throws bombs, but, like, you could probably count half a second or more with every strike he throws. The interesting thing about this fight is that I don't know if Gustafsson can win if he cannot push Renat back. And I don't think he's going to be able to push Renat back to the fence. We haven't really seen Gustafsson get denied his pressure. And, like, Renat is the type of guy who can probably, just because of that slow twitch muscle and a lot of it, just hold his ground in the center. Renat also hits quite hard. For anyone who has defense, they can move because he is so slow. But when we take someone like Gustafsson, who does not really have defense, he might get hit, and he could get knocked out by it. He's probably not going to go out cold. He is a relatively durable guy. But I am going to go against the consensus and say that Renat either wins a decision based on landing, like, one big strike in 2 rounds, or he drops Gustafsson and gets, like, the guillotine again. I would not be surprised if everyone is finally being like, oh, Renat's definitely going to lose this one. And then he just drops and submits Gustafsson in the first 30 seconds. So, even though Gustafsson is alive, I'm not saying Renat definitely wins this. If Gustafsson can just bully Renat back to the fence, he definitely could win in very dominant fashion. But I do have to mildly lean Renat because I just don't think it's going to happen. Gustafsson himself said that he's the least technical fighter on the roster. He's all pressure and cardio. Yeah, I mean, that describes him well. Renat robbed his last 2 fights. Yeah, I mean, he's not had the best track record, but we also haven't seen Gustafsson fight someone with his style. Renat is going to beat Gustafsson. Renat's had suspect decisions, but let's be real, he's much more skilled. Yeah, I do think that's the case. The only reason why I'm not confident in Renat, and if this was a little different, I would be, is because Renat is probably going to throw the big hooks and overhand. If Renat was someone who threw, like, straight rights or, like, big uppercuts or something like that, I would be very confident in Renat here. But because of the fact that he is going to throw overhands and, like, there's a possibility Gustafsson could just blitz forward through that, I could definitely see a path to victory for both of them. So, official prediction, Renat decision. We will see what happens. Whoever wins this fight might go further than anyone was expecting, I guess. I don't think it's going to be very difficult. Renat Tank hasn't looked the best, and he's looked physically weaker in the later rounds. He seems mostly dangerous early with his right hand. Yeah, I don't think Renat would knock Gustafsson out in, like, round 3 or anything. If Renat is not ahead in round 1, he's going to lose. If you see Gus get ahead, feel free to live bet him because he will very likely just go downhill and dominate. But if Renat clips Gustafsson early, I could see Renat going downhill and just making that work once every round, or again locking up this up. What's your favorite punch to throw? I assume a jab or cross. Good question. Yeah, probably just a cross. Crawford versus Canelo. I'll go Crawford versus Canelo once we do the prelims. Okay, Tavares versus Bryczek. So, a lot of people are just going to assume Bryczek gets killed because of how bad his fight against Potieria was, but this fight is a bit more interesting than that in my opinion, because Tavares is just not dangerous at all. He's relatively good everywhere. So, when I say someone is well-rounded, usually that's actually more of a bad thing than a good thing. Like, if I say someone's well-rounded when I'm talking about, say, like, Kamaru Usman, then it's definitely praise, because he's good at everything. If you are good at everything, fair enough. But if you're well-rounded and you're okay at everything, I actually very much dislike that, because I think it's better to be very good at something and worse at everything else in your skill set, because then at least, okay, you have a game plan and a path to victory that you can impose. When you're just okay at everything, unless your opponent is just worse at everything, they're probably going to win. Now, granted, Tavares isn't like low level at everything. He's good enough that he can definitely get wins out. But he's never going to be able to, say, like, break someone with cardio, or knock someone out with power, or, like, get someone to the ground and submit them, right? He really just has to outpoint them because there's absolutely nothing special whatsoever about his game. Bryczek, on the other hand, is more of a specialist. He is a first-round knockout guy. Now, if he cannot get the first-round knockout, things definitely can go worse for him because he definitely does not seem to carry his power as well into the later rounds, and he's not the best point fighter in the world. But in round one, between his straight and his lead hook, he is very good at producing those finishes. So, even though Bryczek is probably the worst overall fighter, I am going to pick him to win this. Now, I would not be shocked if Bryczek won round 1 and then lost rounds 2 and 3, or even just lost out all 3 rounds. But I think Bryczek has a more definitive path to victory here, which is putting the pressure on Tavares early and just landing the big left hook. And I do have a feeling it is going to land and he is going to get Tavares out of here. Then everyone's going to get confused because they thought Bryczek sucked because he lost to Potieria. So, Bryczek first round TKO. If it doesn't happen, though, he probably gets smoked in rounds 2 and 3 and loses the decision. Jack of all trades, but master of none. Yep. Tavares' stand-up is extremely weak and bare. He's like a less aggressive and much... I think you mean much more like worse defensively. Strickland somehow, but he's tough and takedown defense is very solid. Yeah, exactly. So I have to pick Bryczek again, reiterating one more time, but it's a weird fight. Defense is devolving, I think. Yeah, I can agree with that. I do think that Tavares is slowing down a bit, and especially against Bryczek, you don't really want that. Honestly, I think Potieria beats Tavares as well. Potieria is very underrated in my opinion. I could see that, yeah. Potieria was in this weird position where they just gave him like 5 really good fighters in a row. I really don't know why. So everyone thinks he sucks, but he was okay. He also just had really bad decision making. Like he gassed himself out against Borralho instead of like picking his shots, where he definitely could have beaten Borralho. But yeah, anyway, so Sam Patterson against Trey Waters. Trey Waters is, well, they're both very long. Somehow Trey Waters is longer than Patterson, despite Patterson having like the reach advantage in pretty much all of his other fights. Waters is going to use that distance and is pretty much a pure striker with it. He's going to pump the jab from the distance, try to land across as you come in. He will just move around on the back foot, try to counter strike, force you to come in, put yourself in bad positions, and so on. Patterson, on the other hand, wants to get the takedown as much as possible, but has evolved to the point that he is not helpless on the feet by any means. On the feet, he is mainly a counter striker. So it seems like his evolution in strategy has been to like, okay, pressure a little bit early, and then if it seems like he's going to have to strike, let his opponent come to him, and then try to get a takedown from there. This is an interesting fight because both of these guys have never really fought someone that their opponent, like that has a game plan similar to their opponent. There we go. Patterson, I guess, is closest because he fought Borralho. Borralho was kind of similar in terms of reach and was trying to snipe from a distance. Borralho is more of a power puncher, though, while Waters is really just looking for accumulation and pitter-patter and such. Predicting this fight is weird because I feel like Waters is overrated from very mediocre wins. So, like, if we look at Waters' history here, he lost to Bonfim. Okay, that's fine. Bonfim is a good fighter. But then he beat Josh Quinlan and Goff. And if we look at Josh Quinlan, other than like what could have been a fluke first round knockout, he's just not good. I think he popped for juice also. So ever since he popped for juice and got off, he just has not looked great. Losing to Adam Fugit, especially at Adam Fugit's older age, was not a good look to say the least. Then, based on the fight with Waters and Goff, it's like the same effect that we had with what's his name? With Kutaladze and, God, I'm blanking on his name. You guys know who I'm talking about, right? I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Vucenic, there we go. So when... Yeah, so when Guram fought Vucenic, Basically, everyone came out of that fight thinking that they were both amazing and were both going to dominate their next fights. When in reality, they were both kind of not at the level they needed to be, and they both got destroyed in their next fights. I think this is kind of the case with both Waters and Goff, because they had a war where both of them hypothetically looked good, and then Goff just got absolutely smoked in his last fight, and even in this fight did not look at all fundamentally sound, and still was able to make it very close, arguably win. So I think it's the same thing is going to happen here, where everyone's like, oh, Waters is a great underdog, Waters has a good chance, but it's just he looked good because he wasn't fighting good comp. Patterson, on the other hand, had a good performance against Borralho, was able to knock out someone who was supposed to be a much better striker. So even if it's on the feet, he's not going to be lost. And because he can stay on the feet now, I think he is going to be able to wait until an opportunity opens up for the takedown, and then probably finish it on the ground. So I am going to pick Patterson by submission, and I think that Patterson, if he can fix some fundamental issues on the feet, does very much have the chance of being a prospect. Well, honestly, I cannot say the same for Waters. There's just nothing really impressive about his game overall. Everyone Patterson has gone to the ground with in pretty much his entire fight history has immediately gotten subbed. So I think that if that happens again, we're going to see the same result. Waterson's BJJ, not so good. Patterson should have a nice advantage on the ground. Yeah, exactly. Jordan Vucenic, yeah. People forget, man. Chinned, Hashmoose. Yeah, chinned by Hashmoose, I should say, yes. Prime Whitaker, Imavov. Interesting question. I'm going to say Imavov. I think he probably would have gotten chinned at some point. I could see him having success. I could see it looking very much like the Adesanya Imavov fight, where Whitaker's having a bunch of success, he's looking great, and then just gets knocked out. Okay, Harry Hardwick versus Kelly Fernandes. I do not know how the odds on this fight are remotely close. So, Harry Hardwick, he's a tough guy. I know a lot of people like the Hardwicks because of their backstory or something. I can't say I know much about that. But when you watch him fight, like, his movement feels like you're watching a kid spar, where it's like, okay, they understand what they're supposed to do, but they're just so uncomfortable with the movement that it just looks so, like rough. Like, everything they do is a bit jerky and just not fluid at all. Fernandes, on the other side, is the opposite of that. Like, everything he does is extremely fluid. Maybe too fluid at times, in all honesty. But he's never going to have a problem in his movement being weird. He moves very well. His kicks are extremely good. Most of his knockouts have been via high kick. He, of course, tries to chew up the lead leg early. He did it to both Guram and Yaya. Was able to finish Yaya, was not able to finish Guram, but basically had him knocked out like 3 times. So Hardwick, even though he's like well-rounded and can put a pace on someone, I guess, over 5 rounds, he has good cardio. He's just not in the same league as Fernandes. Like maybe he'll have leveled up and I will be really shocked. I don't see this fight as mildly competitive. Like, I think Fernandes should be around -500, -600 here. I think he beats up Hardwick's lead leg in the first round because Hardwick has gotten chopped by leg kicks before. It's not an uncommon thing for him. Then just gets put away by a head kick. So I'm going to say that this is just a very simple fight to predict. I'm going to say Fernandes first round knockout. I know they needed a replacement, so I guess it's better than nothing. I think this almost might be a good thing, because if we had the other fight, it would have been a prospect killer fight with Faraz Ziam, where either Ziam or Fernandes would have gotten turned back much earlier than they should have in their career. With this fight, at least we sacrifice Hardwick, we get another highlight on Fernandes, and then Fernandes looks a lot better going into his next one, and then maybe people will finally actually give him the respect he deserves there. Hardwick is very unathletic. Yeah. Totally agree. Gonna get his leg 8. Yep. Fernandes is gonna sun this English Bulldog probably. The Hardwicks are both extremely overrated. George is like Mark Kransky level, and Harry's not much better. Fair enough. I think Cowie is super overrated. He is much more of a kicker. All his opponents let him be in kicking range like Guram did on paper. Hardwick smothers everyone. I disagree with you heavily there, because Fernandes can punch also. It's not just that he can only kick. He likes to kick, and he's very good at kicking. But think of it like this way, right? Yair is also a heavy kicker. he makes it work because he understands the distance and is able to use it effectively. Fernandes is the same way and has more power in his hands than Yair does. So I think Fernandes is much better than people think because he sets up all his kicks very well and he disguises them very well. Like, Grum isn't someone in the past who was getting chuffed by leg kicks. I think everyone is thinking now, because Grum got dominated by Fernandes, that Grum is terrible. Maybe Grum wasn't the level everyone thinks he was, but I think Fernandes is just that good that he exposed him. It's probably Kelly grappling why the odds are so close. Yeah, but do we really think Hardwick is going to be able to take him down and control him? I mean, maybe, but I don't see it happening, especially on short notice over 3 rounds. Especially if he starts getting his leg kicked a few times first, which will probably happen because I don't think Hardwick is going to shoot instantly. So, I guess, but I can't see it happening. Perry's last opponent got finished and won by Weston Wilson. Oh my god, okay, fair enough, yeah. Who would have won between Ziam and Fernandes? I was going to very unconfidently pick Ziam to win a decision, like a close decision, maybe even a split decision. I think it would have been a very close fight. I have no idea how Ziam was minus 350, I'm not going to lie. It would be a good fight. I just want that fight to happen in 3 years when they're both like around like top 5 to top 7. Harry's been in camp because his brother is fighting. I mean, it's not the same as being in camp yourself, though. And even if he was on a full camp, this wouldn't really change my prediction here, in all honesty. Okay. Tybura versus Delija. So, okay, some of you may know this or may not know this. This is technically a rematch. They fought, I think, like around 8 years ago or so. There's not much we can take from that fight because Delija had some early success, then Tybura started having a little bit of success, then Tybura checked a leg kick and Delija snapped his leg. Like Anderson Silva, Rick Greger style, snapped his leg. So, yeah, we don't know much from that, but that's technically one of the losses on Delia's record. Delija is kind of like a educated brawler-ish type fighter, where he's either looking to get you to the ground and pound quickly, or just put you on the fence and unload there. He has solid power. If he doesn't get you out of there in round 1, he's probably not going to get you out of there. It's probably going to decision. He is well-rounded in the semi-good, semi-bad sense. For a heavyweight, oftentimes that's good enough, but there's nothing remotely special, or remarkably special about his game, I should say, other than the fact that like maybe he's very dangerous in the first 2 minutes. Tybura, on the other hand, is the opposite in that he's not really dangerous at all unless he can just get you to the ground and pound you. But he is very sound everywhere to the point it makes him very tricky for the uppercomers to fight. He will just strike if he doesn't think he can out-grapple you. He will out-grapple you if he doesn't think he can strike you. Basically like the Sam Hughes of heavyweight in a sense, where he's just going to do what you can't do if he can. If you're actually very talented, you will probably finish him very quickly. If you are not talented, you will struggle immensely. Delija is in the camp where he's just bordering it, right? There is a chance he chins Tybura in round 1, because Tybura can get hit. He's a little bit of a slow starter at times also, and Delija is very dangerous in that first like 2 to 3 minutes. I don't think Delija is really going to get a takedown, but his chance to like find a knockout on the feet in the first 2 to 3 minutes is his best chance in the full fight, in my opinion. If Tybura survives, he should probably win a decision. I don't think Delia's at the level, though, where he's just going to run straight through Tybura. It's possible. It wouldn't shock me, but I don't really think that he is immensely talented. Most of the people that he beat in PFL, like his wins aged really badly, and he had a semi-close fight to what's his name, like Maurice Green or something, who was absolutely terrible, and that was like one of his last like legitimate wins. So it feels like Delija is slowing down, even though he's technically the younger fighter here. And I think ultimately he's gonna, I think Tybura will squeak out like a 29-28 decision, typical Tybura style. I think you might be underestimating Hardwick. He looks weird when he fights, but he's very effective. It isn't tested as much. I mean, I would love to be wrong. I don't want the fight to be so one-sided, but I would be very shocked if I was wrong. Because you can tell by how people move how comfortable they are just in a fight in general. Like, if their movements are very stiff, it doesn't work at the higher levels. You need to be able to be smooth to have the proper reaction time and proper movements. So I can't see Hardwick not getting destroyed, but maybe he pleasantly surprises me. We'll see. Thoughts on Gustafsson moneyline, Kyle moneyline, Pitbull moneyline, Ruffy KO. We'll get to all those. Injuries hindered Delija a lot. Yeah, that's fair. I just don't think that at this point in his career, he's about to go on a run in UFC heavyweight. So it probably gets stopped here. I wouldn't be surprised if he lost a decision and then retired after this fight or something like that. Omar Sy versus Brunson Ribeiro. This is a weird fight to break down because we don't really know what we're going to get out of Omar Sy. Sometimes he's incredibly aggressive. Sometimes he's just waiting for his opponent to make a mistake. Sometimes he decides he doesn't want to fight at all, like last fight. So on paper, he should have destroyed Alonzo Menafield. We, of course, got the staring match that we did, and then he lost a close decision there. On paper, though, at least, he's going to be a high-paced grappler who's just constantly going to look to get dominant position, ground and pound a bit, and then get the rear naked choke. It is probably how he's going to fight. On the feet, he is a little bit slow, so he can be hit. He does hit hard. He did have knockouts earlier in his career, but I don't think he wants this on the feet. If this is on the feet, it favors Brunson Ribeiro, because even though he isn't the most technical striker, he hits hard. He can basically just chin lower levels of competition because of the fact that he hits hard, and he can take a shot a few times. Of course, against someone like Zhang, that didn't work because Zhang could just take his shots, fire back, and then finish him. Of course, levels like Mirzakhanov, he's going to struggle as well because he just has no nuance in his striking. He's basically just throwing like 1-2s and wild hooks. Ribeiro has some semblance of a ground game. He did almost submit that Dagestani kickboxer. I'm blanking on his name because he hasn't fought since. But he almost did submit him, I think, by a guillotine in either rounds 1 or 2. And then, of course, he got the Kimura last fight against DR. But DR was also kind of exposed to just be garbage, so I don't know how much credence to put into that. C should make this an easy fight. Realistically speaking, like, even though I know no one's going to trust him because of his last fight, I don't see how he doesn't, like, submit Ribeiro within 2 rounds, probably within 1 round. But, yeah, I mean, I don't blame anyone who's being scared about this fight and just doesn't want to see C fight again because of how terrible that last fight was. Omar moved to ATT. That could definitely help him. Yeah, he's on my no bet list. That is fair enough. We'll move on from that one. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. I don't know why... Okay, I guess that's a thing. I don't know why Ruchala's face is covering half the screen, but that is what it is. UFC website for you. William Gomis kind of changes how he fights, but typically he likes to fight long with a lot of kicks. He kind of has that traditional, like, low-volume Savate style, where he's just going to kind of move around on the outside, throw the round kicks, try to hit the liver if he can, and then just go from there. He kind of punches if he needs to. He's fine everywhere. He's had some decent reversals in the wrestling sequence. He overperformed a lot against, blank on everyone's name today. Yeah, a lot of people thought he would get destroyed by Brito. He looked pretty good. Controversial decision, but I did think he won. He did the more damage, in my opinion. Against Emil, he kind of just got overwhelmed in terms of volume, because if you can continuously pressure Gomis, because of the fact that he doesn't really look to put you away usually, you can definitely break him down. That being said, I did actually think he should have edged this decision, but it was a very close fight. A lot of you aren't going to know who Ruchala is, so I'll go more in depth on him. He is like basically the epitome of a chaotic power puncher. I don't know who saw or didn't see my reel on him, but basically he's going to throw big hooks. He's going to throw like crazy spinning like kicks to the body. He'll throw like round kick, spinning kick, and then like do the same sequence like 20 seconds later, kind of like a prime Tony Ferguson in some ways. The problem is that he likes to cause chaos so much that it ends up putting him in stupid positions. Like, he'll just try to roll out of a position for no reason instead of, like, actually using fundamental takedown defense, and then just put himself, like, on his back, or even worse, put his opponent on his back. So, Ruchala is not a fundamentally sound fighter by any means. If Ruchala is going to win this fight, it's going to be because he caught Gomis with something wild in like a chaotic transition. It's not going to be because he beats him over like an extended 3 rounds. Gomis, in my opinion, should win this fight 8 out of 10 times, if not more, because he's just a better fighter at pretty much everything. I could even see him finishing Ruchala, because Ruchala's defense is just not there, and he will eat the liver kick over and over until he gets finished, potentially. So I don't think go the distance here is that safe, even if you're favoring Gomis, but it is definitely the most likely outcome. The two instances in which Ruchala wins, he has to drop Gomis early in all likelihood, because I don't think he's going to have the energy to do it later. Maybe he's able to land like a spinning back fist in the later rounds, I guess. He will go for that in transitions, but I think more likely if he goes for a spinning back fist, he'll just give his back and then get controlled the entire round. So, Gomis decision, official prediction. I don't think Ruchala is going to be the fighter that everyone wants him to be. And I don't really know why he's the one getting signed, because there are, in my opinion, much better fighters in those promotions. But maybe Octagon and KSW fighters just don't want to go to the UFC. I don't know why, but it's possible. Hey, Ghost Rider. Robert is a watered-down burrito, but even more reckless. Yeah, and even like less fundamentally sound, in all honesty. Ruchala has a lot of heart and good cardio. Eskiev was hurting him bad and came back and finished him. Yes, but the fighters that he was able to come back against just were not nearly as fundamentally sound as Gomis. I do get what you mean, though. Like, it would not shock me if Ruchala found something big, but he should not win this fight, in all likelihood. Okay, so someone asked me about the boxing fight, Crawford versus Canelo. Before we go into the main card, I'll answer that question. This full disclaimer, I do not watch boxing nearly as much as I do MMA. I do not understand it nearly as well as a sport, so take my predictions with a grain of salt. But the way I think about that fight, if I have to make a prediction, is that everyone who's favoring Canelo basically says, like, oh, he's going to be too powerful for Crawford. Where everyone who's favoring Crawford says that he's going to be too fast and too skilled. And if these are the two arguments here, I have to favor the person who's quicker and more skilled. Because the reality is Canelo can have as much power as he wants. If he doesn't land, it's not going to matter. So I am going to narrowly favor Crawford, because I do think he is probably just too fast for Canelo. The caveat with that is if, for some reason, Crawford put on a lot of muscle to try to bulk up to the weight class and is moving way too slowly, okay, that could be a problem for him because he's used to being extremely fast. But I do think ultimately Crawford is probably going to be too fast for Canelo, and I'd mildly favor him there. Canelo is skilled as hell too, just Crawford is maybe the most skilled. Yeah, so because Crawford is more skilled, I'm not saying Canelo is not skilled, right? But if everyone is openly admitting that Crawford is more skilled, then I couldn't, in my right mind, pick Canelo. Have you already talked about Kada versus Pitbull? No, not yet. I'm about to. Also, Crawford is a natural 147-pounder and Canelo is a natural 168. I don't think it matters, in all honesty. I think that, especially in boxing, weight classes are an overblown narrative. If we're talking about MMA, weight classes can matter a little bit more because of the grappling, right? In grappling sequences, if you get on top, having a weight advantage is massive. In boxing, it's like, okay, yeah, if you're bigger, you can land heavier. But if you're smaller, you can be faster. There's a trade-off either way. So I don't think just by nature of being bigger and, like, more powerful, Canelo is going to necessarily win. All right, let's move on to Kada versus Pitbull. Then once we finish the main card, I'll go back to some questions for a bit. So, Pitbull, we have seen in his last two fights in the UFC, has basically just been a very, very low volume power striker who will introduce the grappling to try to steal rounds back, essentially. He's not the Pitbull he used to be. A lot of people who watch Bellator a lot have a different interpretation of who Pitbull is. And I don't blame him, because he used to be a very different fighter where he was going to move forwards, he was going to throw volume, and he was a lot more dangerous because of that. We have the old, low-activity version of Pitbull. And that version of Pitbull, in all fairness, is still very dangerous, but I do want to make clear that he is not who he used to be. Hito, on the other hand, is much more in his prime, to say the least. The way he fights is he basically just slings everything with full power. So the way he throws his right hand is kind of similar to how I talked about Rusaboyev doing it, where it's like, okay, instead of just throwing it, he will like sling it with his body weight. Now, Kada does it in a better way where he doesn't necessarily overexpose nearly as much as Rusaboyev, so I don't have as much a problem with it as I did with Rusaboyev by any means. So I don't think Kada is just going to like overexpose his hips like I expected Rusaboyev to do because of how he throws the right hand. But it does leave him a little more vulnerable because it takes longer to recover from throwing a right hand like that than if you threw it normally. In the pocket, he's going to dig to the body with the left hand, sometimes just throw 3 hooks and then try to come out. He doesn't have any real fundamental like pocket boxing defense, but he does a pretty good job at controlling distance. Even if he does get hit, he has a relatively solid chin, and his sprawls are very powerful and very quick. So, from what we've seen at least, which to be fair has been a much lower level of competition, he has not struggled much in the grappling. Against Pitbull's grappling, I'm not as confident it will hold up, but my first thought would be that Pitbull will either not take him down easily or not take him down at all. This fight, in my opinion, is going to come down to if Pitbull can find the counter in the pocket or not. Because if Pitbull is able to time Kada and counter in the pocket, he could potentially finish him or just outpoint him to decision here. Realistically, with Pitbull's reduced durability over time, he has gotten hurt in his last 2 fights, and the fact that he has slow volume now, I am favoring Kada to probably land either the big right hand or maybe a left hook in the pocket and put Pitbull away. But this is one of these weird fights where Kada's competition has not been spectacular, and we're either going to find out that he can do the same thing to these UFC level guys, or he just can't and he's really a regional guy who has not fought anyone noteworthy yet. Kada cage cutting incorrectly, which probably won't be a huge problem in this fight, but does give his back a lot. I've seen him give mount before. Yeah, so in all honesty, if I were to pick a fight between Kada and anyone up the rankings of Pitbull, I'm probably picking the opponent. But with Pitbull himself, I do have to pick Kada to get the knockout because Pitbull just doesn't put enough out there to be a threat anymore. I don't think Pitbull is going to get the takedowns. But it's a weird fight that I will probably just be watching and not bet at all. I understand if anyone's betting either side. There's definitely a justification, but this is a fight to just watch, in my opinion, and see what happens. Pitbull shells up too much. Kada can score, hurt him in the pocket. Yeah, it's very possible. As long as Kada doesn't get over-eager, he does have a good shot at winning this fight. My concern for Kada in this fight would be like, okay, you're overextending a little bit into the pocket against someone who has the power to put you away with one punch. Will it happen? I don't think so, but it definitely could. I think more like Prime Peter Yan versus a old man version of Ilya. Volk versus JDM, the MMA equivalent to Canelo versus Crawford. That's funny. Alright. This is another weird fight to predict. So one thing I will say about this week, I have a feeling most people are going to do very badly on predictions this week. Because there's a lot of fights that I really could see going either way. Like if we go back to the beginning for a second. Okay, this should be Sam Hughes. But this is like kind of 50-50. This, in my opinion, is kind of a 50-50. This should be Patterson, but like Waters winning wouldn't be the most shocking in the world. Okay, this is definitely Cowie in my opinion. Not a 50-50, but close. Okay, definitely C. Very likely Gomez. 50-50 as well, though. And this is another one of these fights that I'm going to say is pretty close to a 50-50. So the reason for that is one thing to make clear in the beginning. Sola is on short notice and coming up a weight class. He is the more skilled fighter, though. Sola is very fundamentally sound in terms of using his jab to set things up, getting to his takedowns, and so on. He's well-rounded, but not in the same way the others do, because he at least has a very strong jab that he focuses on a lot. If he cannot get like his takedown easily and just get a finish from there, he will just bust up his opponent with jabs for 3 rounds if he has to, and then eventually try to put you away with it. It's very interesting to watch. My biggest criticism of him is that in the pocket, his defense kind of sucks. That's my concern for him in this fight, because of the fact that Reese is much more dangerous in the pocket and is going to have a massive power advantage here. If Sola wins, he's probably just outclassing Reese to a decision. If Reese wins, it's probably going to be by like highlight reel first round knockout, because Reese has a lot of power, has the willingness to basically just run at you and trade in the pocket in the beginning of the fight. He was able to upset Frunze in his last fight because of the fact that he has that power and he has like the durability in the pocket to trade that way. The biggest problem with Reese is that, even though in my opinion he's very talented, his boxing fundamentals just are not spectacular in general. Like, besides even the fact that he lost all of his other fights in the UFC, I believe, losing to Chimaev isn't the biggest deal. The Angelosa fight wasn't terrible either, because at least Reese was keeping pace throughout the 3 rounds and almost did finish Losa in round 3. But overall, like, even when Reese hurt Frunze, we saw Frunze almost survive because of how bad Reese is at putting together fundamental combos just to land and finish his opponent. So it took the 3 knockdowns, and Frunze survived to the end of the round and started coming back at the end of the round after getting dropped 3 times. So, even though the circumstances favor Reese a lot, I am going to mildly lean towards Sola at this point. I did flip my pick. Earlier in the week, I was picking Reese, because I was like, oh, he's just going to get in the pocket and knock out Sola. But thinking about it now, even though I wouldn't be shocked if Reese did that, Sola is just so much better in terms of his fundamentals as a fighter that I do have to pick him. What UFC events have you been to IRL? None yet, unfortunately, because it is expensive. In his last fight, he got really reckless trying to finish him. In Reese's last fight, or Sola's? I assume you're talking about Reese, right? I'm gonna mute for a second while I drink some water. Alright, here we go. Yeah, Reese, yeah. He did get very reckless, and it wasn't even just the recklessness. Like, I don't care if people start throwing a bunch of volume, start moving forwards a little more than they should, but it was just the fact that he didn't have fundamental boxing combos that really bothered me. Stay unmuted so we could hear you drink water, fair enough. Paul Hughes will be cornering Reese. I mean, I don't think good fighters cornering other fighters really matters, in my opinion, because a lot of good fighters are really bad coaches, and we've seen that multiple times. So even in like Grum's fight with Fernandes, like his corner was like Merab, Topuria, and Chimaev or something, right? And he obviously got just absolutely eviscerated in that fight. So yeah, I don't think corners really matter in that sense. I think just having like one good head coach in the corner is a lot more important than having like other good fighters there, in all honesty. This is a fight that I actually don't really understand the narrative with, because I don't know why Mason Jones was ever hyped at all. I have a very low opinion of Mason Jones, and I've always had a very low opinion of Mason Jones. His grappling is relatively solid. I will give him that. He is, again, on the more slow twitch side. If he can get his hands on you, he can drag you to the ground relatively well. He does control position relatively well, and he can be dominant there. On the feet, if he hits you, it's going to hurt. He does hit hard, but he's so ridiculously slow, and his defense is so atrocious that I don't know what I'm looking at half the time. Like, he was struggling with the 50-year-old Jeremy Stephens on the feet at times, and then when he got him to the ground, he still couldn't finish him there. And for context, for people who don't know, Jeremy Stephens got subbed by Gamrot in like a minute. So, Jeremy Stephens is not the epitome of defense on the ground, to say the least. I don't know why they re-signed Mason Jones to the UFC. I do not believe he's UFC caliber. I think Oki's going to absolutely walk through him. Oki makes some weird mistakes at times. He was outclassing Duncan and then decided he needed to shoot takedowns. He shot a takedown, nearly got guillotined, escaped, decided it was essential that he needed to shoot another takedown, and then just got guillotined and tapped. Or I think he went out cold. So Oki does not have the highest fight IQ, to say the least. But Oki is extremely fast. So we have an extremely fast striker with a very high percentage takedown defense against a very slow striker who is a decent grappler, but is probably not going to get the finish on the grounds, and it's probably just going to get outclassed whenever it's on the feet. So I could be crazy, but I think this is a very 1 + 1 = 2 matchup where Oki should just be so fast and be able to counter everything Jones does and should just beat him up for 3 rounds. Jones is durable. I don't see Oki getting a finish, even though it is possible. So I'm going to say Oki wins by unanimous decision 30-27, maybe even 30-26. I could see there being a rounds that where like Oki just absolutely tees off on him, but isn't able to quite get him out of there. Yeah, I don't know why I don't understand the perception of Mason Jones at all. If anyone like has a backstory on this, please let me know, because Jones has been like a massive favorite in most of his UFC fights, and then completely underperformed in pretty much all of them. So, yeah, I have nothing to say there. Battle of the Mid, fun fight though. Yeah, it should be fun. If Jeremy was tagging him, Oki is a great dog pick. Yeah, exactly. Mason Jones struggled against Jeremy Stevens. I know Oki is not all that, but come on. Yeah, exactly. So, unless I'm absolutely losing my mind, Oki should win this easily. I saw nothing in the tape that made me think that Jones has any chance here whatsoever. All right. So our favorite coin flip fighter, Paul Craig. This is one of those fights where it feels like something really weird is going to happen. I don't know why, but okay, on paper, obviously, Modestus Bukauskas, I can never say his name correctly, I'm just going to call him Modestus. Modestus should knock out Craig. Modestus has pretty accurate striking. He has very good fundamentals with his taking defense. He is not the most fluid striker in the world. He is a bit too reliant on like finding his right hand from weird angles. So like, it's kind of similar to the Hardwick thing, except not to the same extreme, where everything he does doesn't seem fully fluid, and because of that, he's more prone to being caught. But overall, he's fine everywhere. He has power in his hands. He can hit hard. So he should knock out Craig hypothetically. Craig, on the other hand, of course, is known for pulling guard, finding the triangle, or finding a triangle armbar from there, something like that. Craig did actually look better in his last fight. He was finally actually throwing other techniques and shooting actual takedowns. So I don't know if Craig decided that at like 36 years old, he finally needs to evolve as a fighter, or what the deal is, but he actually looked good before that weird ending with Borralho in his last fight. That being said, again, yeah, Modestus should knock him out. But if Craig is improving his punching, because he's always had decent kicks, he is kind of alive here, because he does have threats from all different directions. He can shoot takedowns to make Modestus like lower his hands, like try to get that into his head, potentially land a kick or land punches up top. If he brings back the spinning back kick, he could just use that to keep distance for the entire fight, and maybe like even edge out a decision here or something weird. To be clear, even though I am kind of hyping up Craig here, I am definitely picking Modestus by knockout. But Modestus feels like the type of fighter who's going to get himself in weird positions against Craig, not do the intelligent thing, and like either get finished or somehow lose a decision. His spinning crotch kick. The body kick of despair strikes again. Yeah, exactly. Only reason he was doing good last fight is because he said if he doesn't get the win, he's getting cut. I mean, it's probably similar in this fight, in all honesty. If he gets knocked out here, he probably retires, I would assume, because he's on like a 5-fight losing streak or something crazy. So I do think Craig is in a must-win situation. So we may see a better version of him, but we'll see what happens. Craig being in the UFC is abysmal to me. I've rarely seen a fighter with an inability to improve or change in general. Yeah, up until his last fight for sure. Who do you think is the most powerful light heavyweight of all time? Probably Alex. I do think that his pure power is probably the highest, yeah. If I'm on Clive, I'd be begging Dana for the Paul Craig rematch. That's valid. Craig has 1 win of 7, I think. Oh, okay, fair. Did he get some... Oh, he beat like Muniz in between or something, right? I'd say Alex or Yuri. Yeah, I think Alex has more pure power, but I get where you're coming from with Yuri, yeah. Ooh, Rumble. Yeah, that is a decent pick. Rumble might have had more than Alex. You could be right there, yeah. Okay, before we do go on to the co-main event, I do have to, of course, promote my betting service stuff. If you guys have not seen it before, basically what we do in the betting service is we have a Discord, which basically has a bunch of tools attached to it via bot commands. So we use algorithms to get the base money lines that we use to bet with, then we put together parlays, and we have tools for whether fights go the distance, what methods fighter wins, etc. We've been up, I think, around 160 units this year so far. We're doing extremely well, even though betting has been extremely volatile this year. So if you are betting on this event, and you're betting any serious amount of money, I do recommend you guys join. We are doing extremely well, and it is a great community. Everyone in there has been great. So the link is in the description if you guys do want to join. Always feel free to DM me if you have any questions about it. But I'll get on to the co-main event now, after answering one question. I think Thiago Santos was the most powerful. Yeah, there are a few good candidates. Rumble and Thiago Santos are definitely good candidates. Alex is slower, but he might have more power than the two. I don't know how the three would compare head-to-head. It's a very interesting question. You think Islam is top 4 to 5 if he beats JDM, especially if he finishes him? Yes, I do. It'll be interesting, too, to see how this fight goes. Ruffy is probably a big favorite in this fight. So Ruffy is around minus 200 right now. So, okay. Everyone knows these fighters, but I'll give a brief overview of the two of them anyways. So, Ruffy's nickname, I believe, is One Shot, right? I'm not making that up, correct? Okay, he doesn't even have his nickname listed here. I think it is One Shot, though. But anyways. So, Ruffy does fight like that. He is basically looking for a single puncher kick to put you away with. He is a very dynamic striker. He will throw anything from his, like, weird scissor kick sweep to spinning kicks to, like, on the regional scene, he has even weirder stuff. But whatever. Basically, any strike you could think of, he can throw. He doesn't really put together combinations so much. He does like to cover a lot of distance quickly and hit you that way. His power is relatively unreal for lightweight. I think the only person who might have more pure power at lightweight is like maybe Prime Connor, and even then it was probably just more precision. Yeah, I would probably say Ruffy definitely has more power. People will say Topuria, but Topuria tends to put more of his body weight into things, so I'm not really counting that as much, while Ruffy can just blast you with a straight and just knock you halfway across the octagon. I've been very high on Ruffy for a while. This is going to be a very interesting fight. So, BSD on the other hand, there is one thing I want to get out of the way here. The commentary last fight was abysmal. I did rewatch that fight. If you just listen to the commentary, it sounds like he did a lot worse than he actually did. He did definitely make two big mistakes that fight, and both were based on the distance in which he was throwing a round kick. He threw a round kick in the pocket twice last fight, which wasn't the best look, but at least it was just one tendency. And then there was a place in which Prepelec threw a counter, and then Cormier was screaming about how BSD was hurt. And then if you watch the replay, the counter didn't even land. So, yes, even though it was not the most impressive performance of all time, it is not like as terrible as they would make you believe. BSD is basically all pressure. He's going to run forwards, try to get into the clinch. He's going to try to push you against the fence, take you down. In the clinch, he'll beat you up with elbows. He'll throw a few knees. He will try to get his knees to the face against Poirier. He did, I think, land a few grazing knees to the head. It was mainly the elbows that were taking the toll, though. He'll blitz forwards with, like, multiple kind of shovel hooks, so to speak. He isn't the best at moving his head during those, but he did show some evolution with it last fight. If he gets you to the ground, he's mainly going to look for the rear naked choke. If he gets you on the fence, though, and you're half taken down, he'll just ground and pound until he can get you to quit. Very durable, very entertaining, kind of lacking in the fundamental defense situation, of course. This fight is interesting in which I have a very controversial take here. And I actually flipped my opinion significantly on this. When this fight was announced, I thought that this was basically a free win for Ruffy. And I carried that opinion until I started watching tape this week. And then when I started watching tape this week, I realized that even though Ruffy is a very dynamic striker, everyone loves to ignore the fact that he really hates pressure and he really hates being on the back foot. His sole loss came against heavy pressure when he was forced to be on the back foot constantly. And even in other fights, even against lower level opponents, he has not looked spectacular on the back foot, and he can't really find counters there. Even his left hook counter against, what's his name? Lontop, yeah. Even the left hook counter didn't really come while backing up. It was more so like, oh, Lontop threw, and then he was able to step forwards as Lontop was throwing and throw around it. So, in this specific matchup, even though Ruffy is the better fighter, I definitely see a path to victory for BSD. Because if he does not play much on the outside, which I don't expect him to, and just constantly pressures forwards, Ruffy is going to have to show something new to have a chance of winning this fight. Because if it is everything he has done before, he's just going to get pushed against the fence, get elbowed, and potentially stay on his feet because he has solid takedown defense, but just eat damage on the feet against the fence until he's basically not capable of producing enough power to hurt BSD. Now, for this matchup, yeah, you want to be at the Fighting Nerds. Is it 100% possible that they have adjusted and found a game plan to knock out BSD? I would not be surprised in the slightest. If we saw a flying knee finish or something along those lines, yeah, I mean, that makes sense given his skill set and what the Fighting Nerds do in general. But I am going to have to pick BSD here to probably get like a second round submission, because I think he can pressure nonstop. I don't think Ruffy is going to be able to find something on the back foot, and I don't think in the brief moments in which BSD is standing in the center, Ruffy is going to be able to find something quickly enough to damage BSD to the extent that he can't pressure. So I'm not confident here because I am a big Fighting Nerds believer. It's really making me question my pick here, but yeah, I do ultimately have to favor BSD. Denise could for sure pull the upset. Just the striking is risky. Got to try to get the bottom triangle. Yeah. He has a tattoo of Luffy on his back or chest. That's why his name's Luffy. Yeah. Or Ruffy, yeah. BSD looks so slow last fight. Ruffy's going to be so much quicker. Yes. Ruffy definitely will have a massive speed advantage. DC fat rolls covering his eyes, man. Fair enough. Wish I could see some of Ruffy's grappling to get a sense of it against top 10 guys. Fair. Ruffy's going to win. BSD lost to Moicano, and Moicano got washed by Izzo and Benil. Well, again, that's a very different style. So Moicano was just looking to get on top, and BSD's defense from his back was not good enough to get up. But Ruffy's not going to take down BSD and ground and pound him. At least I'm pretty sure he's not. So in my opinion, that matchup doesn't mean anything for this. I think Ruffy is overrated. Personally, haven't seen enough in his game yet to be a future champ. Fair enough. Correct all the Fighting Nerds except for Kaio are dependent on pressure for their offense. I don't think that John Silva is. Because John Silva's perfectly comfortable pulling you in and then landing a counter. John isn't dependent on pressure. Yeah, exactly. BSD will be improved under Nicholas Ott. Very possible as well. How do you think John does against BSD? John does much better because he's perfectly willing to be on the back foot and has a lot of counters there. I think Ruffy's boxing offensively is very predictable and defensively has a lot of bad habits similar to Israel, in my opinion. Very possible. BSD fights like a wild man, but in slow motion. He might as well email them. Fair. John beats BSD. I could see that for sure. I have a weird feeling BSD is going to win by DQ. Interesting. What do you think is going to cause a DQ? Do you think BSD is going to put in a cycle on the fence? Yeah, I basically think this is just going to be, BSD throws one round kick, runs into the clinch and starts elbowing, pushes him backwards, and just elbows him against the clinch and knees him for 15 minutes if he needs to. I don't think it's actually going to last the 15 minutes. I think it will take a toll on Ruffy, and by round 2, he's not going to be able to deal with the damage anymore. But yeah, I think as long as BSD's coaches are under no illusion that he can strike at distance, he has a very clear path to victory here. I don't see BSD having success. Why is that? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were leaning towards Leon against Protez, right? No, I am picking Protez in that fight. I have said that Leon does have the skill set that he can win. But because of how he usually fights, I do have to pick Protez. John is the future 145, 100% agreed. Knee probably. No base to adjust to feeling. Ironic given your name here, but we could definitely see a replica of the situation, sure. I think BSD struggles to control his opponents on the ground. Most is scrambled back up. Yes. I mean, I don't think he's going to take down Ruffy once and finish him. I think it is the pressure and the fact that he's going to be able to force Ruffy on the back foot that is most likely to cause Ruffy's lack of success here. Veterans are typically not going to change their game. I think he gets chinned. Well, first of all, he's not a veteran. He's only been fighting MMA for around 5 years. So he went from regional to this level in the UFC within 5 years. That is something to keep in mind. His game is very much evolving. He's not a veteran. BSD isn't a vet. Yeah, exactly. Veteran of the military? Why would being a veteran in the military not allow him to change his style? I don't quite get that one. I feel like Ruffy is hiding something we don't know about. That's possible. I wouldn't be shocked if there was like a flying knee or something they really intended to hit here. Like, that would not be surprising to me at all. I just have to go by what we've seen so far. If there's something new, there's something new. And Ruffy definitely could use it to win. But based on what we've seen so far, BSD has the advantage. Betting nerds should hire you as their data analyst, better learn Portuguese, fair enough. I could see a damage-based decision to Ruffy. BSD's taken a lot of damage. I could see him getting busted up very easily, even if he is successful in the grappling. I would agree with you, except I don't know when Ruffy is going to get the opportunity to deal with the damage, because he needs time that I don't think BSD will give him. So even though BSD's skill set is maybe not like as high level as some of these other fighters, his pressure is very suffocating. It's kind of like Gustafsson, except he's just better than Gustafsson, right? It's a more educated version of what Gustafsson does. They're stubborn, so we'll likely want to brawl. I mean, I would say that even last fight, we didn't see him brawl, right? He followed the game plan exactly last fight. I want Imavov to win. Fair, I mean, we'll get to that. Alright, we'll go on to the main event. Actually, before I do that, we'll review all my picks because people always come in late. So if you want to know all my picks, we'll go through it quickly. I'm taking Sam Hughes by decision, but I would not be surprised if she got a finish. So this is not a fight where I am betting go the distance, at least. I am taking Renat decision, but I'm very not confident. I also think there's a possibility he finds a surprise submission here. I am very, very tentatively picking Bryczek by first round TKO, but again, not confident. I'm picking Patterson submission, Fernandes first round TKO, not confident, but picking Tybura decision. Picking C by submission, picking Gomis by decision, but I could also see a late finish. Picking Kada TKO, but again, not confidently at all. Picking Sola decision, but again, not confidently at all. Picking Oki decision. Picking Modestus TKO, but with the caveat of this one just gives me a weird feeling. Picking BSD second round submission, and now into the main event. Thanks for the recap, no problem. Okay, so this is a very interesting fight because I feel like a lot of people are very confident one way or the other in this fight, and I just don't know what makes them confident. So, Kaio is like the definition of fundamentals. When he shoots a takedown, it's because the takedown is there. When he blitzes in, it's because the opponent is there to get hit. He tends to move out very well, so all of his stats look spectacular. Like, let's look at Kaio's stats. So yeah, he has above 60% accuracy and defense, which is very rare for someone to have both. He has pretty good takedown defense, and he has over 50% takedown accuracy. So these stats make him look like an incredible fighter. The weird thing is, of course, when you watch him fight, it's a little bit underwhelming compared to what you'd expect with these stats. And it's mainly because he fights in such a tactical manner that it can be a little bit boring at times. One thing to note about Kaio is that he is not a natural southpaw. He adopted the southpaw karate stance to emulate McGregor during that era, but I do believe that he is right-hand dominant. Now, considering that, he doesn't throw as many jabs as you would expect. Usually when a fighter is right-hand dominant and they're fighting a southpaw, they really use like the lead hand to throw like a bunch of jabs, lead hooks, etc. He doesn't quite do that. In the Cannonier fight, though, he did throw more jabs than usual, so maybe he is trending in that direction. But overall in his career, I've not seen many lone jabs out of him. Mainly just the jab cross if he's going to throw the jab at all. With the karate stance, he does like to blitz in. If you give him clear access to the hips, he will take you down. And he's basically just going to look for an opportunity to open up. He's not going to really force anything. He will fight a very slow fight if you let him and just wait for you to make a mistake, essentially. Imavov, on the other hand, is much more chaotic in how he fights, in that he's extremely fast twitch. So, I've noticed something that makes me slightly worried about my analysis sometimes, which is that every once in a while, a fighter does something that has an effect, and has a very positive effect. Now, I will look at it and be like, oh, this fighter is very intelligent because they were able to produce this effect, and they did it via this manner. Now, the problem is, occasionally, fighters do it purely by chance, and they're actually just stupid and just, it happens. So, that's why I have mixed reads about Imavov, and I'll explain why. So, in his last fight with Adesanya, he, technically speaking, set up the overhand very well. He conditioned Adesanya to expect the jab into the takedown. So Adesanya started looking down right after the jab. Because of that, when he switched to the jab into the overhand, he was able to catch Adesanya sleeping because Adesanya first looked for the takedown, and by the time he started looking up, he was like, oh, the overhand's landing. Now, I don't think it was by accident, because it seemed like a very intentional setup, but I will say, full disclaimer, maybe it was an accident, and maybe I will overrate Imavov because of that. Imavov is the fastest middleweight in UFC history, I believe. That speed does mean, of course, that he does slow down because he is pure fast twitch. He is relatively fundamentally sound, but he can be held against the fence, and that does slow him down to an extent. He tends to struggle in the pure muscle for muscle exchanges, if that makes any sense. Once Allen got him down, Imavov just couldn't get up without giving up something, so he just didn't get up for the round. But after that, of course, he was able to stuff 9 takedowns in a row. So his fundamentals, takedown defense-wise, when he's expecting it, are quite good. Imavov is the much faster boxer. Imavov is the probably more explosive grappler, even though Kyo's stats are definitely better because he waits for opportunities to be open. But the fact that Imavov has certain clear weaknesses, like slowing down in fights, like the fact that his calf kick is very open, does make this somewhat concerning for him. Because again, against the fighting nerds, you don't want such clear weaknesses, in my opinion. So this is what makes the fight very 50-50, is that I believe Imavov is the better fighter. I believe he's explosive enough to potentially knock out Kyo, and overall, on paper, he should win this fight. However, Kyo is very intelligent, he is a coach, and he is willing to fight boring. So if he is going to just have a game plan of, oh, I'm just going to calf kick, hold you against the fence for 2 minutes, calf kick, shoot a takedown, and then do that for 2 to 3 rounds, and then maybe pick up the pace in the last 3 rounds, I could see Kyo either narrowly winning the early rounds or dropping the early rounds, then picking up the later rounds and winning a decision that way. Because of these dynamics, where it's Imavov could shin him or win a decision just as the better fighter, or Kyo could just be smarter and expose his weaknesses, I feel like this is a very 50-50 fight. If Imavov's coach or Imavov himself did intentionally create that setup in the Adesanya fight, then I'm going to favor him because I feel like you could do similar things to Kyo. I think that the way Kyo moves, sometimes his footwork does leave him vulnerable, and especially on the back foot, he is very vulnerable. So I think if Imavov is okay, I'm going to push this guy back, and I'm going to land something big on him early, I think there's a solid chance it happens. But if the game plan isn't as direct as it should be, if he lets Kyo hold him against the fence, if they haven't resolved certain issues there, then this could turn into a Kyo fight very quickly. So I'm going to say I very narrowly favor Imavov, and I am going to pick Imavov by second round TKO, but I really could see this fight going either way. I definitely wouldn't say Kyo has good overall boxing fundamentals. There's plenty wrong that he does with his footwork. Well, he has a very karate-style boxing fundamentals, right? So it's not as much that it's quote-unquote wrong, it's that he's halfway between the two styles, which can sometimes produce weird effects, in my opinion. Imavov by second overhand right in the second, very possible. Imavov is very consistent for me. Kaio is more consistent performance-wise. That is true. Way more tape on Izzy than Kaio to make those reads as well. Yes, true. Trust me, it wasn't an accident you're seeing Nicholas odd game planning. That is very possible. If he is that good, I mean, if he's that good, then probably both Imavov and BSD win here. Bill Hawes was faster than him when they fought, but that was a while ago. Yeah, that's when like Imavov was in his infancy as a fighter, in my opinion. Imavov is a pretty small middleweight. He only weighs like 200 pounds. Yes, he is on the smaller side. I was going to wear on him. He is a way more complete fighter. I feel he's going to mix it up well with the grappling and striking to a decision, but Imavov is very fast and powerful. Yep. Imavov is so hit or miss, man. Yeah, true. 5 rounds, yes. Imavov 48-47 split decision. That would be interesting. I forgot the main event, fair enough. Imavov versus Allen is so weird, bro. Yeah, I think that no one looks good against Allen. It's just the reality. Like, everyone criticized Imavov for that, but then we saw Fluffy fight Allen, and even though Fluffy is like a pretty good fighter, Fluffy did not look good against Allen. He very, very nearly lost. So I think Allen's just one of those fighters who's just not quite good enough, and his terrible fight IQ makes him lose certain fights, but he's good enough that he makes other good fighters look bad, if that makes any sense. I feel like Imavov's cardio is slightly overhated. It is. It's not nearly as bad as people make it seem, but it is definitely not a strong suit. You forgot to mention Kyle making weight twice. Yeah, that definitely could be a factor. For me, this fight is about the back hands and oblique kicks of Imavov versus the jab and low kick of Kyle. Kyle has speed, but Imavov has speed and timing, which is just too dangerous for Kyle standing, possibly. We're forgetting is Kyle is a Brazilian in a main event, and the only one who won a main event is Walker. Yes, true. DDP should train with Craig Jones if he wants to win the rematch. That is very true. His cardio isn't on Kyle's level for sure. Yeah, exactly. Fluffy has since said he was injured and couldn't push the pace because of it. Even if he was injured, I don't think that's why he looked bad. Because Allen was catching him with shots and like reversing in positions that were just a fundamental skills difference. By the way, there's so much drama between he's yapping about who is going to be back up and who is touching and whatnot. Yeah, it's stupid. Fluffy's a huge favorite against RDR. Yeah, I get why. So I'll do one more promotion and then we will just get back to any questions. So again, if you are betting on this event, if you are betting on UFC in general, do consider joining the betting service. We're doing extremely well. We use algorithms, and there's my picks as well, and then the community makes a bunch of good picks as well. We're also doing really well in Contender Series, even though we don't have the algorithms covering that. We're just making picks and making a lot of money off Contender Series. It's been very good for us this year. So consider joining if you guys have not already. I hope to see you guys in the Discord because we have a lot of fun and make a fair amount of money there. Now we'll just go on to questions and have some fun. If Kyle works around shooting off his jab and is able to pressure and mix it up for a long period, I could definitely see him winning. Fair. RDR is going to see Fluffy. If he does, it's probably with the knees. The Ritter's going to drop a piano on both of them. Fair. Hard to unsee Imavov getting controlled for the entire first round against Brendan, but like you said, Brendan Allen makes a lot of fights close. Yeah, exactly. By the way, what's your takeaways reaction to DDP Chimaev? I was personally very surprised at DDP's lack of a plan B after rounds 1 to 2. So yeah, I was actually thinking about that fight, and I realized that the way DDP game plans might be a double-edged sword. I still am very high on DDP's game planning. I do think he's going to come back much stronger. But if the way that him and his coach expect the fight to play out does not play out, it may very much limit their ability to win the fight because they're so reliant on what they saw in the tape. So for example, they expected Chimaev to pursue the finish at all costs. So it seems like their thought process was, oh, all we have to do is survive the first 2 to 3 rounds. We don't have to make it competitive. We don't have to like stop the takedowns. All we have to do is survive. And Drake has did a very good job at that. The difference is that Chimaev did not pursue the finish. So we saw a case where like, okay, your game plan technically worked, but because your opponent's game plan was so different than what you expected, it didn't win you the fight. So yes, DDP definitely needs to fix his wrestling fundamentals. And I do think they need to make their game plan slightly broader in case the fight is progressing in a way they just do not expect. How much money? We're up around 160 units this year so far. Imavov or DDP, I feel like DDP would beat him by unanimous decision. So I've always said that I think that Imavov is a very, very bad matchup for DDP. And part of that is because of DDP's loss to Roberto Soldic. So DDP tends to struggle with these faster guys with power, because even though DDP is relatively fundamentally sound, he does leave some openings because he's so aggressive, and when someone is just fast and powerful, they can potentially chin him. So I'm very 50-50 on the fight, but I still think I would slightly lean Imavov. I'm getting my credit and debit cards in this month. You know, I'm starting that betting streak, fair enough. RDR body shots will be too much for Fluffy, very possible. Where did you go wrong in your Chimaev versus DDP pick? I think I kind of made the same assumption that they did, that Chimaev would just empty his tank early. And him not doing that very much changed the dynamic of the fight. Would you prefer to win the main events? I would say that Imavov is the more entertaining fighter, while Caio is the more likable fighter, so I'm kind of fine with it either way. This is one of those fights where both guys kind of have an equal way to win, yeah. How much tape do you watch per card? I've been doing tape on all fighters recently and unsure if it's necessary. So the way I do it is, if I already am sure of what my pick is, then I barely do it. I only do enough so that I can explain things properly, and that's it. The more 50-50 I am on a fight, the more tape I'll watch. And that way it's like, okay, I'll watch enough tape until I can form an actual accurate opinion. DDP hard is so good, though I was like, I'm going to finish him in the 5th round. Yeah, DDP definitely has, like, unshakable confidence in that sense. Should DDP move up? Who would give him a challenge? I don't think he should move up yet. I think he has the chance of getting to the rematch, especially if he just goes and works with, like, Craig Jones or some very high-level wrestler. What is a unit? So it's basically just a standardized measure so that we're not talking in dollars, because everyone has a different betting budget. So the way I do it personally is just 1 unit, is just 1% of your current betting budget. I'm a big fan of DDP, but he's very slow at adjusting mid-fight. Because he's very chaotic, he doesn't seem to notice his success versus failures in fight. Yeah, he very much has a set game plan and struggles to deviate from it. DDP got the sub or TKO in round 5. I wonder what we think of him. Yeah, fair, it's a good question. Brendan Allen would have had a better chance than 2nd and 3rd if he just gave up on takedowns that he was just failing. Yeah, I agree. Who are you picking between Imavov and Chimaev? I'd have to pick Chimaev. Can DDP grapple Imavov? I think that Imavov could probably defend most of his takedowns, at least early. The later the fight went, the more it would favor DDP for sure, though. DDP was dehydrated at 170, that is true, yeah. Unironically, Paulo Costa is the worst style matchup for Chimaev. It's possible. It would be an interesting fight. I still think that Chimaev would beat Costa. But yeah. What's up with your thoughts on DDP being nowhere near as skilled as you made him out to be? Thumbs out his prime DDP on his resume. How... I don't know what you're trying to now, though. I don't know what that sentence means, but fair. The rest of it, yeah. I don't think that DDP is any more or less skilled than I think he is. I think that the game plan was just not as effective as it should have been. There are definitely things that... Like I'm saying, I made the same mistakes in thinking of the fight that they did, but not quite. I do think my game plan was definitely better, if you guys remember the video I did on it. So like, I expected DDP to take the center of the ring immediately and try to pressure Chimaev and force him to shoot on the back foot, because Chimaev really does not like shooting on the back foot. But it seems like they didn't even factor that in. They were just very confident in, oh, we're just going to wait for him to fatigue himself. So there was just like nothing else. I think that even with the game plan they had, and as bad as his fundamental takedown defense was, if they just factored in like, oh, let's pressure him so he can't shoot easily, let's do like a few things, expect certain shots and so on, maybe throw like flying knees when we pressure, stuff like that, I do think that they would have had a much better chance of winning the fight. But I'm not entirely sure why they just eliminated all the other stuff. How do you see John Silva beating Topuria, KO decision? If you were to win, I think it would be by KO. I think that a fight between the two of them is kind of like a glass cannon style fight. I definitely don't think Imavov's a bad matchup for DDP. Imavov's fast and dangerous, but he's a less unorthodox Sean in the feet. Well, the thing is that his power is like 10 times more than Sean, at least in terms of how Sean actually fights. I don't really agree with the comparison there. Do you train? Yes. I believe in Costa. Fair enough. Did you study data science? Yes. Would you book these guys depending on who loses? Winner's definitely getting a title shot. I would say loser should fight DDP, actually. Costa genuinely is fantastic. BJJ he never uses. His lineage is really great, and his improvements have been pretty noticeable. I think he wipes Shara and rides off to a contender fight. It's very possible. Hamzat versus Bo Nickel freestyle wrestling match at 175. Nickel wins in wrestling, that's for sure. Obviously MMA, very different question. Hamzat or Jones at light heavyweight? I'm gonna lean Jones. I think that Jones has made a career out of defending wrestling from better wrestlers, so I think he could win. I think Kaio is an overall more dangerous matchup for DDP than Imavov, especially over 5 rounds. I don't think so, because I think Kaio is going to wait too long. And I think that waiting is very bad against DDP. You don't want him to get momentum. Hamzat said Francis the kind of guy that guns were invented for. Fair enough. How are you doing? I'm alright. How are you? Yeah, Rodriguez is the GOAT. I still think DDP can win the rematch. Yeah, he can. He just has to change a lot. DDP literally did not down block once. Yeah, exactly. Like, I literally said, like, oh, down block pressure and force him to shoot on the back foot, and he did none of that. That was one of those fights where it's like, what are you thinking? Hamzat versus Ankalaev is interesting because they both trained with, yeah, I always blank on how to pronounce the name, but yes, I know what you were talking about. Yeah, it is an interesting fight. I would probably lean Hamzat. DDP looks super slow in reaction to takedowns. Chimaev's speed advantage looked very apparent. That I expected, yeah. But yes, Chimaev definitely has faster shooting than DDP has reaction time. How much do you think MMA has evolved in the last 5 years? I'd say like 15 to 20%. Leon Edwards is going to KO Volk if they fight. Hopefully Volk retires if he loses again. Yes, maybe. I have not looked at tape for that fight yet. Ngannou versus Aspinall, who wins? It's a good one. I would probably mildly favor Aspinall. A fight I really want to see after 319 is DDP versus Fluffy. How do you see that one? I think that's a pretty easy fight for DDP, to be honest. You're on Edwards, yeah. Silly question, but how do you reckon Ankalaev fares against Yuri or Aspinall? So I did talk about the Aspinall matchup earlier. I don't think he could beat Aspinall just because he doesn't really have one-punch knockout power that you want to deal with Aspinall. Yuri is a closer fight. I am going to favor Yuri because Ankalaev tends to struggle against more chaotic opponents. I compare Sean and Imavov because Sean primarily has a jab, overhand counter, and a teep, while Imavov has a right hand, a teep, and occasionally two Sean combos. The styles are very different, though. You can have similar weapons, but have completely different styles. Imavov's style is to go slow to fast very quickly. Sean just wants to keep a steady pace and just slowly outclass you defensively. Imavov wants to find the small opportunities to hurt you or knock you out. DDP bought into the hype. Maybe. I feel like it's possible. I think maybe his coach did, because I think his coach was saying weird stuff. But yeah. Prime Usman versus Hamzat. I would say Usman, because Usman Prime had just basically unstoppable takedown defense. Yeah, Aspinall will just outmuscle Ankalaev. Yeah, or just land one shot. Do you know what your best and worst weight classes are for predictions? My worst weight class is heavyweight. Heavyweight, in my opinion, is just a straight up coin flip. So at this point, I don't even value my own predictions at heavyweight. My best, I think, is like, it's either bantamweight or flyweight. I forget. It's one of the lower weight classes. DSD looks like he fights in molasses, and Makano is calling him slow, does not giving up, and it's fair. I'd say Kaio is more of an overall threat than Imavov because of his movement in the cage and his fight IQ and more dynamic striking compared to Imavov, even though Imavov is obviously more dangerous. But the thing is, I don't think that, like to beat DDP, you need to be able to break his momentum. And I don't think someone like Kaio can really do that. Maybe. I mean, maybe Kaio can just hold him down if DDP hasn't fixed his takedown defense, and that's how we could break the momentum. But if DDP fixes wrestling, then it's not going to be the case. Who's the worst MMA coach now? Possibly Eric Nixick. Do you think Poatan should move to heavyweight, or would it be a bad move? I think he'd do very well at heavyweight. I think that if he takes this fight seriously, he definitely can win. It just doesn't feel like he's taking it seriously, which is weird. Would you have picked Ferreira to chin Ikram? Yes. Who do you think beats GSP at welterweight? I assume you're asking. Honestly, I don't think anyone right now. Eventually, we will see someone who would have, but I don't have anyone who I think would have yet. You think Yuri right hands and angles will be too overwhelming for Ankalaev, or does Yuri fall into the counter strike and eventually gets KO'd early? I think the weird stuff, like the spinning like elbows and stuff like that, will be how Yuri can win. He needs to put a very high pace on Ankalaev and overwhelm him. Like the way that Johnny Walker was having success in round 1, Yuri is just a much better version of that. I hope BSD gets slept and retires. He's genuinely really bad and has taken a lot of damage with little to no improvement despite his interviews. He thinks he's got a gift to French MMA. I disagree with you there. I think that his fundamental, he definitely has fundamental flaws, but I think they are very overblown based on a loss to Dustin Poirier and a loss to Moicano. Now, the loss to Moicano is worse, yes, but it just exposed that he didn't have a good game off of his back. And like that happens, especially when you haven't been in MMA for a very long time. And losing to Dustin Poirier, especially when you were beating him up for a round, is also no real shame. Like, I feel like the weird BSD hate is kind of strange. Are you a big Corey Sandhagen fan? I assume that's asking. I don't like how he's not more aggressive. I do think his personality is entertaining at times, but I would like to see him change his style a little bit. Are you not at all worried of John Silva getting too big for featherweight? I think it will happen eventually. I think maybe if he gets the belt, he wins like 2 defenses, then moves up. Van has way too much pressure boxing and takedown defense for Pantoja. It's possible, but he can't make one mistake or he's going to get subbed. We went over this, but times change your opinion. How can Van beat Pantoja? Van has to focus on the body strikes. If he can wear out Pantoja, he could get a later finish. But he has to be able to stuff the takedowns, obviously. That's just a prerequisite to beating Pantoja. Johnny Hendricks beat GSP, but I think GSP post-knee surgery was almost a completely different fighter. That's fair. I mean, let's also not forget that Johnny Hendricks was very likely very juiced based on what happened right after USADA came in. So saying like he beat GSP, in my opinion, has a lot of caveats. Nixon has been on a generational stinker. Yeah, exactly. Why is Nixick so bad? I don't follow Extreme Couture fighters much. Everyone who trains with him turns into a sparring fighter. They just completely lose all intensity. Do you value Atabak Gautier as a prospect? He isn't 6'4", though he literally had a photo shoulder to shoulder with Strickland. He was the same size. I mean, his power is definitely interesting, but he definitely needs to fix his striking defense fundamentals, because there will come a time, of course, where someone's not just getting hit and put out instantly. And in that case, he may struggle if he hasn't focused on putting like enough time into defense, because his defense so far does not look spectacular in the short moments we've seen it, that is. It's sparred too much, yeah, agreed. Any fighters not signed to the UFC you think would do really good? I would like to see, oh god, I'm blanking on his name. In ONE FC. The, oh god. Christian, I'm blanking on his last name. Angela's brother. I think you guys probably will know who I'm talking about, but I'm blanking on the name. How would a GSP versus JDM fight go? I think it would be pretty close, but I think GSP would probably get enough takedowns and enough like ground and pound there to win the fight. UL or Hamzat? I'd take Prime Romero, actually. In the stage you aren't fighting just to win, you're fighting in a crowd, you feel nervous. I'm not sure what that was responding to, but would you say that in order from best to worst that the best matchups for DDP is RDR, Fluffy, Kaio, and Imavov? I mean, his easiest matchup is RDR. Probably then Fluffy, then Fakhretdinov, Imavov, in my opinion. The Poirier loss is overstated. I hate BST just because I assume you're saying. Fair, I guess. Ankalaev versus Prime Jones 205. Who would you take? I would take Jones because Ankalaev doesn't have a response to the oblique kicks. Because he's so like flat-footed and plotty, he would just keep walking into the oblique kicks over and over. Van is like Kai France in their style. I would say Van is more volume dependent, while Kai France is more one-shot dependent, but I get what you mean. Corey's boxing has declined a lot in my opinion. He's lost a lot of snap and aggressiveness. I think that'll be a problem against Rob. I don't know if he ever had it, but I do agree that he doesn't have as much snap as I wish he did. Alex Perez, 38, and already has been a double champ in MMA and kickboxing. Doesn't really have any incentive. I mean, there's always an incentive to go further, in my opinion, but fair. Why Moreno could beat Figueiredo but couldn't beat Pantoja. I mean, first of all, it is definitely a matchup thing to some extent. Pantoja is a very different type of fight, but I think a lot of it is the fights with Figueiredo just really destroyed Prime Moreno. After, like, even in the Pantoja fight, it didn't seem like it was the same person. Like, the shot he got dropped with would not have dropped him pre-Figgy fights, I am relatively confident. And he wasn't able to maintain the same pace, and there was just like other stuff where it's like, okay, you're not the same guy you were before this war. What was it, a trilogy, quadrilogy, whatever. And it's understandable. He took a lot of damage in that sequence. It's unfortunate, but it's what it is. In my opinion, if anyone beats Pantoja, it's Tybura just based on his grappling. Very possible, yeah. I can agree there. Corey Menhi isn't taking Rob so seriously. I think he's taking Rob seriously. I think that Corey's personality is just to play around when he was on camera. GSP was really ahead of his time for sure. Tyra is basically Pantoja but Japanese. Kind of, yeah. I mean, he's also more dependent on like cleaner striking instead of pressure striking, if you get what I mean. Worse chin, of course, as well, but different type of person, but similar style. Yeah, I get what you're saying. That's why I think he's for sure getting a 10th shot. Fair. Johnny Hendricks was juiced, but GSP is also one of the juices. I don't think that GSP was juiced, especially with how hard he was pushing for juicing and like offering to do. Sorry, did that completely wrong. With how much he was pushing for drug testing and how much he offered to do drug testing for fights. He wanted drug testing for the Hendricks fight. So I'm relatively confident GSP was clean. Biggest weakness of Ilya. I would say the fact that he leaves openings whenever he throws the overhand right, both during it and right after, because his resetting can be a little bit slow because of how much body weight he puts into it. Christian Lee, there we go. Yeah, thank you guys. How would Paul Hughes do in the UFC? I don't think he'd break top 10 right now, but I think he has the potential to eventually. There's levels to juicing, but GSP is definitely only a few tiers below Johnny. Yeah, I don't think he was juicing, but I mean, I could be wrong. Which would bet on more? DDP improving his scrambling and overall guard and bottom, or improving his takedown defense and involving on the feet? I would say his guard is fine. He just didn't really have guard for most of the fight. I think it's more so he just needs to improve the takedown defense. I think that is, of course, more likely than him becoming like a pure jiu-jitsu specialist off his back. Then can be chinned. It happened already by Johnson, who beat Loner. Man is a prospect killer. Fair. I'm not doing an integral on stream. I don't even remember how to anymore, not gonna lie. What's your prediction for JDM Islam? I am mildly leaning JDM. What would be the biggest change you would want DDP to make after this loss to make the biggest difference for his future? Just focus on fundamental wrestling, honestly. Takedown defense. Moreno versus Tetsura prediction. I'm gonna take Tyra's submission. And I kind of hate to say it, Moreno is like my favorite flyweight of all time, but I think that Tyra's going to probably make it look easy. Without the benefit of hindsight, was it a bad prediction for Hill to beat Pereira at 300? It's a tough call. I don't know that, like, I always had concerns about Hill in terms of his fundamentals for obvious reasons. What I thought Hill would do was just blitz Alex, and I thought in that situation he might have the advantage. Obviously, it's hard to take hindsight out of the equation because, like, yeah, if I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, okay, well, Hill's fundamental defense was so bad, I should have just taken Alex. But I still understand why I made the pick, if that makes any sense. Do you think Tatsuro has a good chance against Pantoja. Yeah, I do actually. Topuria versus Bexot prediction. I'm very 50-50 on the fight. I have to watch more tape on it. How close is Pantoja to surpassing Mighty Mouse? Mighty said the division was better back then, and Pantoja's defenses aren't aging that well, but I want to know your take. I think that's pure cope. I think that every single one of Pantoja's title defenses would have absolutely eviscerated anyone who DJ fought, except, like, say Cejudo, right? Yeah, no, I think Pantoja needs, like, maybe 2 more title defenses. I don't know how DJ would say that the division was better back then. That's wild. I like DJ, but that's a crazy take. I had a take that I think maybe people would disagree with, but I think Prime could beat Ilya. What do you think? I think it's very hard to call because we haven't seen how Ilya deals with chain wrestling. So having not seen it, it's very hard to predict it. I mean, I think that I would probably slightly lean Ilya just because I think his prep was so much better than Khabib's, but it's a very, very mild prediction. To be fair, the controversy over GSP Hendricks was GSP wanted his own sponsored drug testing company, but Johnny wanted USADA. I mean, ending up with no drug testing was obviously not the the right outcome there, but whatever the case. I think Azamat versus Ankalaev outside of Yuri is the most competitive fight for Ankalaev because they kind of mirror each other, of course, but Ankalaev is much better kicked. I think the problem for Azamat is he definitely fades. If he had better cardio and was younger, I would take him. Thoughts on Usman saying that he beats Ilya? Yeah, Usman doesn't even get ranked in the UFC. Usman Nurmagomedov, to be clear. He's not good. And we had that funny exchange on Instagram. But yeah, no, Usman wouldn't go 2 minutes with Ilya. He would not survive. He's not good. What are some tendencies Diego Lopez has that John Silva can exploit? It's mainly going to be in the footwork. Diego Lopez has a lot of footwork issues, and it's going to end up with him getting, like, probably eating a straight. The Sadikov Chin Moicano. Is that an official fight? Probably, if it is, though. Yeah, Usman is just delusional. Yeah, exactly. I cannot type the answer for that integral. Fair. What's the best division skill-wise, pound for pound, just ranked fighters? It's either, I would say flyweight, bantamweight, and featherweight are all very close together. After that, there's a massive fall off. I would probably say bantam. Yeah, it's really, you can make an argument for any of those 3. Usman and Paul would end up being top 10 fighters or top 5, but I didn't see him ever becoming UFC champ. Maybe in the future, but where they are now, they would not be top 10 in my opinion. Flyweight is genuinely in a great spot right now, and people don't acknowledge it enough. So many fantastic fighters and contenders come up. Yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is UFC, for some reason, just refuses to market flyweight. And I don't get it, because they consistently have the best fights in the UFC. First, who is the worst modern-day champ? And second, how much do I gotta donate for you to solve the integral in live? Okay, so first, let's see. Worst modern-day champ was Bilal. He sucks at everything. To solve the integral live, let's get to, I don't know, let's get to a certain benchmark of, like, subscribers or followers or something for something like that, and then we could do some crazy stuff in that event. Pantoja with, like, 3 more defenses beats DJ, yeah, or even maybe 2. How do you envision Hamzat's title reign? I feel like there will be a lot in the air about the direction we'll go. He just doesn't seem to have longevity. I mean, if he takes it seriously and tries to rack up title defenses, I do think he could, because he probably beats most of these guys. Kai Ezekura just aged horribly. Yeah, I mean, Kai Ezekura is just, I didn't think he should be getting the title shot. I never, like, thought the fight would be competitive with Pantoja, but everyone outside of Kai Ezekura is aged fine, in my opinion. Ilya and Charles beat Khabib. How would Khabib pressure Ilya? I don't quite agree with Charles. I think that Khabib would probably win a boring decision against Charles, but Ilya I would lean towards, yeah. Current favorite fighters. Favorite, stylistically, I would say John Silva. Who else? I have a feeling I'm really gonna like the Contender Series guy, John Paul. We'll see how he does. Who else? I like Tyra as well. I definitely like Tyra. I would say JDM to some extent as well. And I've started to get like fascinated with Ilya. I didn't like him at first, but now I'm just very curious how far he can go. Lopez is also so slow, man. Yeah, to an extent. Usman texted you? No, I don't know where that came from. Early Royval versus Cop prediction. I'm guessing Royval. It's a tough one. I actually have to lean Cop though, because Royval just has so many problems with entering badly and getting countered. Am I crazy for thinking Jones would have struggled / lost to Yuri and Ankalaev? I think that against Ankalaev, Jones would have just used the oblique kick like 5,000 times and Ankalaev would have had no response to it because he's way too plotty. Yuri would have had a better chance in my opinion, but probably would have just gotten out-wrestled. Welterweight is extremely good right now. I mean, welterweight is fine. It's just skill for skill compared to like flyweight through featherweight. It just doesn't compare. Looks like John is itching to KO someone with an elbow. He's always looking for it. Yeah, true. Not a technical question, but I just envision DDP being the Yuri of middleweight in terms of position. Not sure how he gets the belt back, even though he most likely beats the majority of the division. That's very possible. I could see it happening. I could see him beating Chimaev if he is able to fix his fundamental takedown defense. I just don't know if it will happen. Because he's not like new in his career or anything, so we'll have to see how he evolves or doesn't. It's crazy how lightweight fell off because the average size man is in that division, which is crazy. Yeah, I agree with that. Bilal's win over Sean Brady's unironically better than his win over Leon. He almost got finished by Leon. Yeah, I mean, Bilal's win over Leon did not age well at all. And even the Brady win, though, it's like, oh, okay, you got a Brady early in his career and like fake TKO'd him. Like, there was not a good stoppage. So, I don't know. I don't think it's going to necessarily be like spectacularly aging, but I get what you mean. Do you think Joel Alvarez does good at welterweight? And how do you see a Joel Alvarez versus Bahamondes fight going right? I think Joel Alvarez is pretty good at welterweight. Yeah. Bahamondes fight is interesting. I would probably favor Joel Alvarez just because the pure like power difference, but I could see it going either way. Bro makes me sad to this day that Leon lost to Bilal and Bannon. I have no idea how Brady lost to Bilal, man. It's just the matchup. Because the problem is Brady is never going to be able to take down Bilal in all likelihood, so he has to box constantly. When you have to box constantly when it's not your main skill set, like, okay, he just didn't have the cardio to keep up with Bilal's pressure. So, even though Bilal is just like, as a fighter, is so much worse, Brady's always going to struggle with him. The Colombian's going to dominate welterweight, mark my words, fair. Why don't you like Bilal? He's just so unskilled that it bothers me. He also loves to say stupid stuff, but I don't even really care about that. It's just like, everything Bilal does has like 50 mistakes in it. Like, I don't know. I do know, but like, I don't like the fact that he was ever able to get in like the top 10 in UFC. He's just so bad. Khabib wouldn't dare shoot a takedown on Charles. It's the reason why Islam also didn't on the feet. It's not close. Khabib had much better fundamental submission defense than Islam does, though, in my opinion. I genuinely think Ilya beats everyone in welterweight. He probably beats a few worse middleweights as well, I'm not going to lie. Very possible. I think Jones loses to Yuri. It's possible, but I think Jones would just go heavy on the takedowns and probably win that way. I think we're going to get an Ilya versus Emmett performance from John versus Lopez. Very possible, except I think John will finish him very easily. Who do you see giving John the best fight for now? Same for JDM. JDM, in my opinion, the best fight would probably be, let's see, maybe Protez. I think for John, I mean, Ilya, if it were to happen. Other than that, I don't see much competition for him at featherweight right now, in all honesty. Would you rate higher pound for pounds on pure skill and technical level? JDM versus Merab, I got JDM. I would actually say probably Merab because I think his boxing fundamentals are getting kind of underrated. Just because he got tagged a few times in the past. It's improved a lot now. What do you think of Makhachev's bulk up? He looks pretty big. I mean, again, I think size is like kind of overrated. I mean, yeah, if he's able to get on top, it'll make a difference. but otherwise it's not going to matter much. And I actually think it might be worse for him, because if he's slower, he's going to get tagged more easily. Won't be Ilya versus Emmett. Silva absolutely smokes Diego and KOs him in round 1. Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like Leon must have gotten KO'd in training camp or something, because he didn't fight as much on the back foot in the past. I remember the Cowboy fight, he looked so good. Yeah, I get what you're saying. In earlier fights in his career, he did fight a bit differently. How do you see Aspinall versus Gunn going? Aspinall should take him down and sub him in like about 30 seconds. Having a hard time envisioning how Shavkat versus Brady would go. Not sure how the stand-up looks or how the wrestling exchanges look. I think that Shavkat will have a slight edge on the feet, but Brady's just going to high guard and wade forwards until he can get to the takedown, and then he'll probably finish Shavkat on the ground. Was Ilya a weight bully at 45? I would say no, because I think that weight bullies are really about the wrestling. Like in striking, I don't really see the concept of a weight bully. Like the only time I would see like a weight bully in striking is if you're like a foot taller than your opponent and you're using that to just like bully them with knees. I completely agree with your take on Bilal. To me, he's smart and durable, decently well-rounded. He's so carried by his durability, in my opinion. Yeah, he's definitely carried by his durability. I agree there. Tougher matchups would be Shavkat and Bilal, which I think are easy fights for Islam. Bilal is definitely an easy fight. Shavkat may be tougher, but I would pick Bilal. I would pick Islam, yes. My heart can't take John barking at the corpse of Lopez or Volk. I don't think he'll do that because I don't think he dislikes them. I think he genuinely did not like Bryce. Do you think JDM beats Islam? I'm very mildly leaning JDM, yeah. I answered the Merab JDM pound for pound, I think. JDM versus Ilya would be Canelo versus Crawford and Octagon, fair. Murphy versus John prediction. I'd go John by first round knockout. Rob is a finish hunter now. True. For the Bilal versus Leon fight, I was hyping up Leon so much. I basically made him out to be the next coming of Jesus, technically, then he loses by getting illegally spiked. Yeah, that stuff. Have you seen how bad UFC No Shake card is? I have not looked at it, to be honest. What's on it right now? Are you impressed by Protez takedown defense and scrambles? Despite his long frame and lack of density, I've been very impressed personally. To be fair, Gary is not like the most fundamentally sound on the ground, but it is not as bad as you'd expect for someone like Protez, at least. Why isn't Gary fighting Bilal yet, though? I have no idea. Sean Woodson, yeah, true. Has been begging for it. Yeah, I mean, that whole division likes to not fight each other. It's weird. You think Umar beats Merab in the rematch? I think it could, considering Merab would be up there in age. No, actually, I think that a fully healthy Merab finishes Umar next time. I feel like people aren't remembering how compromised Merab was going into that fight. It was kind of crazy. I think that he would put a much heavier pace on Umar next time and break him and probably finish him. I actually wouldn't watch Gary versus Bilal, fair enough. How do you think the scrambles would go during JDM versus Islam? What is the likelihood JDM gets finished in a scramble? I think that JDM will avoid scrambling as much as possible because the Darce is definitely a threat. So I think that he's just going to try to like use very, very fundamental takedown defense. If he has to scramble, I think he's always going to shoot for the underhook to try to stop the Darce. I think it's going to be the first instinct he goes to. But yeah, I think that Islam will definitely have the edge in scrambles, to say the least, but I don't think JDM will be lost. What are your thoughts on MMA Shay? I mean, he gave me some advice for YouTube stuff, so I appreciate that. I think that I can't say like I watch much of his content or anything, but from what I've seen, his analysis is pretty solid. Main event is David Martinez versus Rob Font. Okay, yeah, that's pretty bad. Gary might finish Shavkat if they fight again. It's possible. Do you think Oliveira has too much to worry about in Fiziev? All I'm worried about is the recent knockout. If that wasn't there, I would definitely pick Oliveira confidently. Merab had a staph infection and he injured his leg, and Umar broke his hand. Yeah, exactly. Merab or Jan, do you think Jan gets finished? I would still say Merab, but I don't think Jan gets finished. No, it's probably a decision again. How do you see a fight between Tyra and Moreno going? I would say Tyra probably subs in round 2, unfortunately. Does Sandhagen have any chance against Merab, maybe by leg locking him? I don't think the leg locks are going to be a thing, because I know that Merab's camp is going to train a lot of leg lock defense, and it's really hard to leg lock someone who trained leg lock defense. Like leg locks in MMA are really not a thing, in all honesty. His best chance is the flying knee, like the video I put out on that. I don't think he has much. Like, I would say that Sandhagen maybe has like a 15 to 20% chance, unless he's improved dramatically. Is there a UFC fighter you've seen ranked besides heavyweight as bad as Bilal? I'm sure there is, but like, I'm not going to be able to think of them offhand, unfortunately. Oh, Daniel Rodriguez. There we go. Outside of Islam, who do you think is JDM's worst matchup? Probably Prates. I have no idea why UFC are making Gaethje versus Ilya. Gaethje's already fought for a title. Yeah, I mean, I guess we get to bet on Ilya in round 1. That's the only bright side there. But yeah, it's not a competitive fight. So long as Morales fights exclusively in June, he dominates welterweight fair. Do you think JDM makes Islam look lost on the feet? What do you think of JDM saying Bilal was a harder matchup for him striking-wise? I hope he does not actually believe Bilal was a harder matchup for him striking-wise, because that's definitely not true. I think that as long as JDM is taking Islam's stand-up seriously, he could definitely beat him on the feet. I don't think he'll outclass him, but I do think he could catch him and finish him. But yeah, saying Bilal is a harder matchup striking-wise is a joke. So funny when Bisping on commentary was annoyed at John Silver having been on the octagon. Yeah, commentators need to shut up if fighters are actually fighting. Like, just let them do their thing. Are you going to go live for John Silva card? It's kind of bad, not going to lie. I'll try to. I want to start doing fight companions because I think a lot of you want me to. So it would be fun, hopefully. So yeah, I'll try to. The gay Colombian is going to be champ. You guys are over. Thank you, the welterweight division. Fair. Tyra versus Royval 2. You got Tyra by submission. Leg locks were a thing while Pajaros was around. Yeah, exactly. How often do you reckon odds makers are right on title fights? I haven't run the stats on it, but I think it's usually around like 70% correct. My friend hit a heel hook on me and destroyed my foot. Jeez, okay, yeah, that should not be a thing. If anyone ever gets like a leg lock, they should just go very, very slowly in practice. This is Justin retiring fight. Well, he'll definitely get retired, I'll tell you that. How do you see Ilya versus Arman going? I think Ilya catches Arman with the left hook in like a minute. Islam has a better chance against JDM using high kicks. Yeah, exactly. Islam, because JDM likes to drop his hands against the grapplers now, which is a valid choice in terms of like, okay, you can shut down the wrestling because of that, but it is leaving the head kick open. Thank you for talking about the Silva versus Barboza fight scoring at 319. I was furious at the commentator calling it a robbery. Do you think Rogan will score rounds open? Yeah. It's so, yeah, you're welcome, and I hate that they do it. It's crazy. What do you think of Islam's chin in general and at welterweight against JDM? Yeah, I don't think Islam's chin is spectacular. So I do think that if he gets clipped, he's going to go down. Do you scream a lot on UFC fights? I never scream, or I shouldn't say never, but I very, very rarely scream. But I get annoyed when fighters do something really stupid sometimes. Yes, please do a fight companion. Yeah, I'll start trying to do so. Go live for the John Silva fight. I want to see your reaction, then John wins fair. Van versus Tyra. It's a really tough one. I'm going to favor Tyra because he has more ways to win, but I could see either of them winning. Less applicable for Pitbull, but how does having Patchy Mix fight another guy from a different promo make any sense? Yeah, I get what you mean. I don't know what they're doing, I'll be honest with you. I think JDM meant that Bilal will probably be more difficult because his toughness and activity versus some be more orthodox in his approach by comparison. I hope that's what he meant. Bro, do a fight companion. It'd compensate for none of my friends watching UFC fair. Do you use R to code your stuff? It's not, if not, what language out of curiosity? I am mainly, I mean, it depends when I'm coding, but I'm mainly a Python person. Should I take stochastic calculus for data science? Calculus is so painful, but like, Yeah, I mean, if you want to do stuff with it, then take it. You'll appreciate having the knowledge later, I guess. It's just always so stupidly painful. When are we getting 5 judges scoring? Yeah, that would be nice. ABGs or Latina Baddies. Let's save that for a celebration stream. You can ask those types of questions. 5 or 10 judges doesn't matter. Judging will only get better if the standards get better. Commissions don't pick random judges off the street. I do agree with that as well, yeah. Maybe I'm tripping, but I feel like maybe after another fight night win, give Derek Lewis a title shot for potential UFC main events. It would be painful if they did it, but I could see it. Actually literally stood there and got beat the entire fight. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for streams and answering so many questions. Really enjoyed the breakdowns and sorts. No problem. Glad to provide it. I think Ian Gary has the potential to beat every welterweight right now. He's very intelligent, which helps him for sure. He's not the most talented in the division by any means. That's his biggest problem. Thoughts on Joe Rogan saying Apex is his favorite. Joe Rogan's just so out of touch with like modern MMA. It's gotten actually wild. If John was fighting Volk instead of Lopez and Noche, who are you taking? I'm still taking John. Derek is the most famous heavyweight right now. You're probably right, yeah. Need to turn $20 into 20 grand. Can you craft me a 3-leg 100% guaranteed to hit parlay? That might be a little bit difficult. 3-leg 100% guaranteed to hit parlay. I mean, okay, I'll tell you this, right? Join the betting service, and we have some interesting stuff there. Unless you're already there, I'm blanking. Are you? I'm blanking on it. Is Kyle versus Imavov the most oralist #1 contender fight ever? Maybe, honestly. I've been following the Instagram for a couple of years at this point. I always look forward to the breakdowns and predictions. Thanks for interacting with the community and answering the questions. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate all of you. John or Ilya? It's very 50-50 in my opinion. I'm going to very, very mildly lean John, but it's a tough one to call. It's going to be a crazy celebration stream, then fair. Delija have a chance, came in late, sorry. He definitely has a chance. I think it's a very close to 50-50 fight. I am very mildly leaning Tybura, though. If Delija is going to win, it's probably going to come like first round knockout. If Tybura wins, it's probably a decision. Or forgetting Joe is commentating for like 30 years and he's old. Yeah, true. You're meant to be the betting guy, man. I am, but I do have to charge for it so I don't go break. Don't go broke. Yeah, I figured I recognized her name in there, yeah. Who's your favorite UFC fighter? Favorites are tough to call because it depends if we're talking about like personality or fighting style. Fighting style wise, I would say John Silva's really up there though. Have you done a breakdown on JDM versus Islam yet? I've done certain tendency breakdowns, but I haven't done a full-fledged breakdown. Who do you even think a potential UFC White House card main events could be? I think UFC would try to do a McGregor card if they could. I really think they would try to, just because they want to get as many eyes on it as possible. People have been riding high on Fluffy Hernandez, what do you think? I don't think he really has much a chance against Chimaev, but I do think he can go pretty far. Who gives Chimaev his closest fight? Who do you see beating Hamzat at welterweight, middleweight, or light heavyweight? Closest fight, I mean, it's tough. I think right now he probably wipes everyone except if DDP improves his takedown defense. The other thing, which a lot of people don't want to hear, but is a possibility, Strickland has more of a chance than people want to pretend, because he does probably have the best, like, pure defensive grappling in the division. He has very good fundamentals in terms of doing the right thing, hitting reversals, getting back to his feet, and so on. I still think he loses, but, like, I could see a weird fight in which he's able to force a lot more scrambles than DDP was and is able to slow down Chimaev that way. When's your next long-form video coming out? That's a good question. I would like it to be soon. The biggest problem is I'm working on so much stuff to try to get it out right now that, like, I don't know when I'm going to get the opportunity to work on it. So basically, to talk about what I'm working on, right now I'm trying to get one more algorithm to add into the betting service. Once that is done, I'm going to go full-fledged into working on the fighter training app again. Then that's probably going to take another few weeks to get out because I have to integrate payment processor and a bunch of other things. And then I have to start like actually promoting it, getting people on it, fixing if there's bugs and so on. The alpha and beta went well, but things tend to break more easily when more people are on it, so you never know what's going to happen. Hopefully I get some time in between to put a few days into making a long-form video, but I can't have a reliable schedule with it right now, unfortunately. How about Kayla versus Amanda Nunes? If we're talking about prime Amanda Nunes, I'm definitely taking Nunes. But it's very tough to call now because I don't know where Nunes is at. It's like, someone takes a few years off, they might look fine, they might look terrible. Am I crazy in thinking prime Luke Rockhold would beat Chimaev, or at least make it very close? Yeah, no, Rockhold might. It'd be very funny if Connor becomes the president of Ireland and wants to fight. That would be hysterical, yeah. Who is the most underrated contender in your opinion? Underrated. I don't know. Let me open the rankings. Let's see. I mean, there's none really at bantamweight. There's none really at featherweight. Sorry, there's none really at flyweight, I should say. Featherweight, I don't think there's really any. Lightweight, I mean, if we're saying like underrated in the sense that people like don't want to be high on them, maybe Grant Dawson just because people hate him so much and like he's much better than people want him to be. But like, do I think he's gonna be champ? No. No one at welterweight. No one at middleweight. Yeah, I don't think we have many like prospects that are super underrated right now. Who's your goat of MMA? GSP probably. Zhang's the best female fighter in the world. If she wins, China has someone fair. I think Merab would struggle at featherweight if he moved up, and I think Charles and Poirier would have beaten Bilal and Leon. I agree with the second half. I think Merab would do okay at featherweight though. Was your I read that one already. Pineapple on pizza. I actually don't have any strong opinions towards it or not. I know everyone has super strong opinions. I'm like, whatever, I could do it. I don't have any inclination towards it. John beating both Hamza and Izzy would be crazy, true. Rob versus Connor at featherweight. That's a tough question. I don't know. I might lean Merab actually, but it's really hard to say. Hamza versus Ankalaev. I'm taking Hamza. I just don't think Ankalaev's that good. Bilal's boxing isn't all that bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, he leaves himself vulnerable to like every time he throws anything. Rogan saying that Apex is his favorite is such a slap in the face to actual fans. Guaranteed hasn't sat through any of the horrible fight nights this year. Yeah, agreed. Arnold Allen is underrated. The problem with Arnold Allen is he fights like once a year, at best. Sometimes once every 2 years. Like, I don't know what he's doing. Rogan doesn't even watch the Apex, probably doesn't even watch the Apex events, valid. Ruffy sleeps Gaethje in one, that's also very possible. Dream matchup, current gen versus older gen. You know, I would have liked to see John Silva against Prime Jose Aldo. GSP versus Anderson Silva, 185, who wins? I mean, GSP was just better than Chael, so I think GSP would have just taken him down and mauled him. I think Prime Figgy would be a nightmare matchup for Rob. I can agree with that. CLD, what's his division? I think he's 185. Yeah. I get what you're saying. CLD is solid, he's just inconsistent is the problem. But you got Umar or Mario? I have to lean Umar for sure. But Mario is evolving quickly, so I would like to see him keep evolving and maybe like cause a crazy upset there. Everyone has been glazing Ankalaev's chances against Hamzat. What are your thoughts on those two fighting a light heavyweight? I favor Hamzat. Arnold Allen has hand issues. I mean, he needs to figure it out if he wants to keep fighting, because like he's not going to be able to get any momentum at this point. think I speak for everyone when we say we need a video on the best MMA chicks or an analysis of oh my god. Who should we see Rampage box now? I think the whole Rampage like MMA guru beef is hysterical. I keep seeing clips of this thing. I think they should actually do like a fight at this point. Why don't you think Ankalaev is any good? I thought the same, but he genuinely has good boxing. He has good pressure, but the problem is he's so plotty, and there's just like nothing special about his game, where it's like, okay, his fundamentals are great, he'll beat a lot of people, I'm not saying he won't, but against Chimaev, I don't think being that flat-footed is good, and I don't expect him to be able to keep it on the feet. Or that one is perpetually injured, which is why he doesn't fight. Also, the 145 is cut is difficult, which is why he's moving up. Definitely wasted talent. I mean, he should have done it long ago then, in my opinion, but fair, yeah. I do think Jose Aldo has a good chance against Conor in a immediate rematch. No, I think it would have, like, it can't get worse, but I think it would have been pretty bad because his, like, psychology would have been even more messed up. Yair Malls Arnold. Possibly. I mean, Yair is better than people want him to be. Yair is definitely underrated right now. If Lopez sleeps Silva, will you make an apology video? It depends why. If Lopez sleeps Silva because he is genuinely the better fighter, then maybe. If there's some weird like situation, then no. Rob is still underrated by Dagestani fans. Yeah, I mean, they just don't like anyone who beats their fighters. Silva versus Topuria at lightweight, who wins? Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I keep getting asked that, but I genuinely don't know. I think it's very 50-50. Ichmaev can later get a belt at light heavyweight. He's light heavyweight top 3 of all time, in my opinion. Very possible. Do you think Aspinall beats every human in the history in the octagon? No. I think there's plenty of people who could have beaten Aspinall, in all honesty. I think even Prime Stipe probably would have beaten Aspinall. What chance do you think you have fighting Topuria? I think it's 50-50, maybe slightly into Topuria. Especially right now, not a good chance, I'll say that. Good night, don't let the Sean Woodson's buy. What? If that's you saying good night, though, have a good one. Drew is the man, but he's definitely lacking analytically. You, Slacky, Shea are more insightful, in my opinion. Appreciate it. Alex beat Ankalaev. What can you do to beat him? Alex 100% can beat Ankalaev. Do I think it's going to happen at this point is a much tougher question, and I lean towards no. But, like, there were a lot of things that were open in that fight that he just did not exploit. Like, the jab was open the entire fight, and then he threw, like, a 1 power jab in round 5. And I was like, oh, yeah, you just hurt him with a jab, and pretty much the first one you committed to. So I don't know what he was doing. Like, he just didn't want to box. I know that he was worried about the takedowns, but, like, you have to strike if you want to win. It was very strange. Isn't Aspinall just bigger than Stipe? He is, but the problem is that he's so vulnerable to counters, and Stipe was such a good counter boxer that he probably would have just gotten slept on like the first or second combo. Who's your favorite commentator? Unironically, probably Senko, because she's the only one who actually like stays objective. Needs to stop grabbing Nina's feet for her spare. Hey man, wish me luck. I got a ABG date on Saturday, might miss the main event for it. Good luck, dude. I think Aspinall loses to someone really random like JDS or something. Yeah, I could see that. I could see him getting countered by like anyone with decent boxing. You have an early prediction for Volk versus Murphy. I have to watch tape, but I'm going to lean towards Volk. I think he's just more fundamental in the stand-up. Alex has to take initiative against Ankalaev. Yes, true. Prime Aldo versus Merab at featherweight. I think Aldo has a good chance. Dean Thomas wasn't bad on Dana White's Contender Series. They need to actually assign him. He's like so hit or miss, because sometimes I like him, then sometimes he says something so remarkably stupid it really bothers me. Like, he said that Charles never should have pressured Topuria. Like, how did you expect Charles to fight? Do you think he was going to have success on the back foot? Topuria wants people to back up. Like, so Dean Thomas sometimes in the moment makes very good reads, but then he also says, like, such stupid analytical things that it actually hurts. Python or C? I'd say Python. Does Merab beat any top contender at featherweight? Oh yeah, definitely. I would say, let's see. He probably beats Murphy. He probably beats Yair. Probably beats Lopez. He probably beats Sterling, but we'll never know, of course. Allen is a tough one, but I'd actually lean towards him to beat Allen also. Yeah, I mean, like, the only real questions are Volk, who I think he would lose to, Evloev, who I think he would beat, but it would be close, and someone like John. They all do that, though. Senko's probably the most consistent. Yeah, agreed. Kiesa was okay on commentary on Dana White's contenders. Yeah, Kiesa is okay. Dean Thomas will be like, well, DC Topuria should have just shot a takedown instead of KOing the guy. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I have a question for you guys, which is that streaming is very good content-wise for me right now, because while I'm working on the products, I don't have as much time to make like the pre-recorded content. But if I'm going to stream, it's like, okay, it just takes the time to stream, which is great. And I love interacting with you guys. That's always a plus. So I do want to stream more. And I've mentioned this before. The major issue with streaming more for me is that on days we don't have full card breakdowns, I don't really know what to do for the content. Because like, okay, the visuals I use right now, except when I'm using like Excalidraw to map out fights and such, is just the UFC website when breaking down the fights. So, while I do want to stream more, I'm very confused at what to stream. Rogan once said, do you score damage or control that fight? And ironically, yeah. And then there was DC when he was saying like, oh, Charles had a sub attempt against Armin and had like half a round to control, but then Armin had half a round to control. So I don't know who wins that round. I was like, what are you talking about, dude? Like UFC 5? That's possible. I hear you can't exactly watch fights, yeah. Make a GOAT list. Yeah, I mean, I could do that stuff. It's just, I always want like that is an occasional stream idea. I just want stuff that we can do on a more continuous basis, if that makes any sense. Freestyle fair. I feel like in between major fights, you could do live tape review. I mean, the problem is I can't show the tape at all. I mean, I guess I could watch it and talk about it, but it's not going to be visually appealing, to say the least. Or clickbaity content in general, fair. You should post content similar to Weasel's MMA, his long-form podcast question content is something you should do similarly. That's fair. Just have miscellaneous question sessions, obviously UFC based, maybe a few tomfoolery questions. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to doing that, especially tied into other streams. But I effectively do want to have an objective with each stream, if that makes any sense. And then like we'll tie in the miscellaneous questions and all that. Or you can teach us Python. Probably not the crowd for that, but I get what you mean. Best UFC fight? Poirier versus Hooker was very fun. Obviously, the default answer of I'm forgetting everyone's names today, but Lawler versus McDonald. There we go. That was good as well, of course. You could break down a card after. Yeah, that could get me another live stream. That is true. Just do what you love, man. I appreciate it. I just want it to also be feasible in terms of entertainment quality. You could do your favorite prospects fighters to look out for. That's possible. I'd be down for a Python series, fair. Do a calculus-based class a bunch of people would have asked already, fair. I like Dustin versus Islam from that last year. That was a good one as well. The biggest problems is that I need some type of visual if I want the stream to actually pull in new viewers. So like, you guys mostly come from my Instagram. Some of you come from like my YouTube long form content, and I appreciate you guys for sure. But if I want to be able to grow things over time, I need to be able to pull random people on YouTube. And for that, I probably need slightly more visual content as well, and I'm just not positive what to do for that. You could do fighter-style breakdowns and have us vote on which fighter we'd like. It's good engagement. Fair, that is possible. 1 hour of John Silva glazing video. I already did a YouTube video on that one, but yeah. Do you think Prime Dustin could beat Ilya? No. Well, I have considered it in the past because, of course, Dustin being a southpaw helps him in that matchup. I think the problem is it's so easy to back Dustin up to the fence that he probably would have gotten chinned. I think Ilya would have just shot in a takedown, Dustin would have ran back to the fence, and then Ilya would have just chinned him there. Octagon Oracle's Contender Series, where you talk about prospects and make fantasy links. Fair. React to other YouTubers. Yeah, I mean, reaction content can definitely be sprinkled in, for sure. There are guides on YouTube as well. Fair. Bro basically said he's going to turn on us day ones. I'm definitely not going to turn on you guys. I just need to add more people into the stream. Remember when Cruz was saying that a fighter can't get choked out with a guillotine? He was low-key fair. Was that, I'm forgetting what fight that was, but I know what you're talking about, yeah. Fighter tier list like Shay does, fair. Do you use Media Pipe to analyze fights? No, I do not. I just straight up analyze fights by the traditional tape study. Honestly, I don't know if it works for you, but companions would be dope. Yeah, I do want to add that in. Dustin's hips have been cooked for a long time. He isn't outboxing anyone, pure striking, fair. At least Dana White's Contender Series or Fight Nights. Yeah, that's valid. You could do career breakdowns, but those can be both streams and long-form videos. You can use fight clips, fair. Curious to your live reactions. Yeah, fair enough. You should do MMA fanfiction readings. Fair. Do you watch other MMA YouTubers? Not much anymore. I used to a little bit more. I think the more you get into making the content yourself, the less like interesting it becomes to listen to other people. I still listen to like certain like card breakdowns or like analysis and stuff like that, but only if it's like pinpointed to, okay, I want to see what other people's opinions are and factor that into how I'm thinking about something. He literally had to line up Gaethje in their fight to start throwing kicks, fair. You can watch... I don't even know what that means. Oh, rolling footage. Oh, okay, yeah. If it's not like copyright issue, that's fair. Sean Brady versus Islam. It's a good fight. It's a tough one to call. I'd probably lean Sean Brady. Was better cardio, Merab or Tony? Probably Merab, just because the sheer number of takedowns he shot. Like, I think that's tougher than just keeping up your striking pace for 25 minutes. Milk or cereal first? Cereal first. Thoughts on Aljamain Sterling title prospects at featherweight? I was not overtly impressed with his performance against Ortega, to be honest. I feel like he really should have pushed for a finish, and I think it's like, he's never going to build hype this way, so they're going to make him take the long road, especially because he's older, and I can't see him beating someone who has like solid takedown defense and decent striking at this point. How did you get into MMA or at least UFC? So I got into combat sports when I was very, very young. Then in terms of UFC specifically, when I was in like early, let's see, what was it? I think I was in really early high school, and I got a summer job, which eventually became a regular job as well. And a lot of my coworkers were really into UFC, so then I started watching it more. Have you done a face reveal? I've not. You could do a how to beat uncertain fighters or who can beat. That's an interesting idea. Fair. Bro, I had a great idea. Since heavyweight is so bad, you should just bulk up to heavyweight and contend my considers first fight with your fight IQ would be unstoppable. I don't think I could physically bulk up to heavyweight. Like, I'm very, like... Yeah, I think I don't know how far I could get to, but I don't think I could get to, like, over 205. Fantasy matchups / cards we suggest on Insta and Discord. That's very possible. Yeah, maybe we need to go in that direction. Prime Tony could beat Ilya for making Ilya drop dead from fatigue after 5,000 shots to the face. Who's the worst out of the 4 fighting nerds, I assume you're asking? I would say probably Kaio. It's a tough call, but I would say Kaio just has like the least attributes that help him, and therefore is probably the worst. If I got to 205, it would probably be not ripped. How close is Islam to GOAT status? I mean, he would have to definitely win the second belt. If he wins the second belt and defends it like 4 times, I would say he's there. Maybe even 3 times. If he gets a solid number of defenses against good comp, I would say he's there. Because you're 6'6", right? Not even close to that. Have you ever thought about being a fighter yourself? Because of medical issues, I'm not capable anymore. There was definitely times where I thought about it, but then when certain issues started like coming in, it just was not feasible. I still think about it occasionally, but like it's not a logical thought. It's just like, oh, I see a fighter do a stupid thing, and I'm like, oh, I should do it. And I come to reality, and it's like, okay, it's not happening. How does Merab have cardio like that? Literal GTA level cheat code. Merab basically just takes the concept of training specifics and takes it to an extreme. So he will always train MMA wrestling consistently for like an hour, 2 hours straight. Do you ever watch UFC events with any friends or family? Sometimes I watch with friends. A lot of the time I've not been, just so I could focus on like the betting service stuff in the Discord. But yeah, I mean, every once in a while I'll watch a card with friends. I saw an interview where Merab accidentally said he's on EPO. Wait, when does he say that? Yuri versus Khalil early predictions. I will lean Yuri. Sure. I think he's too chaotic and just too good and too powerful for Khalil. Am I crazy for thinking prospects are really bad this year? And you know, you're not crazy. This is the most amount of like fraud checks we've had. I could send a link later. Okay, sounds good, yeah. Alright, we're probably going to call it here. I think this is my longest stream so far. I appreciate you guys being here. I always enjoy streaming, and hopefully we can make it a more common thing for me. So have a good night, everyone. Good luck on this event if you are betting, and I'll talk to you guys soon.